Master.
Grant that we may not so much seek
To be consoled as to console.
to be understood as to understand,
To be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive,
it is in pardoning that we are pardoned,
and it is in dying
that we are born to eternal life.
Amen.
WESN.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Pandey urges voters to reject PNM and UNC. New Tobago Tourism President elected. Family of missing rig workers still waiting for closure. Prime Minister promises tech overhaul for public services. And internationally, Trump freezes $2.2 billion in Harvard funding after pushback. Now for the details. Patriotic Front leader Michaela Pandey says both the PNM and UNC have failed the people. Speaking at a public meeting in Laramine, Pandey claimed both parties rob citizens of dignity and hope, especially the youth. She pointed to issues in Couva North, including poor infrastructure, lack of water, and neglect, saying it would have broken her father's heart. She also condemned online attacks against Patriotic Front candidates and insisted the party is running a clean, youth-driven campaign. The Patriotic Front has promised initiatives focusing on safety, prosperity, and food security. Reginald McLean is the new president of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association. McLean, who manages Blue Waters Inn and Speyside, was elected during the THTA's AGM on April 8th. The new board plans to focus on tourism funding, airlift development, and foreign investment reform. They're also pushing for part of the room tax collected from hotels to go toward destination marketing. The board says the sector needs urgent support to overcome ongoing challenges. The family of offshore worker Pete Phillip is still waiting for closure almost 4 months after he vanished at sea. Phillip went missing after a rig collapse on December 22nd. Though his body was located, it has not yet been recovered. His brother Elvis says the emotional toll has been devastating, especially on their mother. Pete's widow recently gave birth to their 5th child, and 2 sons just sat their SEA exams. The family is demanding accountability and action from Well Services and the Energy Ministry. Prime Minister Stuart Young says the PNM's manifesto will be launched within 24 hours. Speaking at a political meeting in La Joquita, he promised faster tech-driven public services, including digital pension processing and grant applications. Young also said the government is being transparent with public servants about salary offers. Youth Minister Foster Cummings added that $200 million has been approved for a new secondary school in La Joquita and warned against voter suppression tactics online. Internationally, President Donald Trump has frozen over $2 billion in federal funding to Harvard after the university rejected new government demands. The White House had called for major changes to address anti-Semitism, including hiring oversight and reporting students deemed hostile to American values. Harvard pushed back, citing free speech and academic freedom. The administration called Harvard's response entitled and said elite schools must be held accountable. Other universities like Columbia have already accepted similar demands to avoid losing funding. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
I am Dr. Delphina Ovid, your friendly neighborhood dentist. At Community Hospital Dental Clinic, we offer examinations which include x-rays, basic oral cancer screening, and a treatment plan. We also offer cleanings, fillings, extractions, root canal treatment, and complete and partial dentures. Remember, you don't have to brush and floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
Where good private health care is affordable.
WESN.
Good morning and welcome to AM Prime on WESN. I am Naomi Magnish.
And I am Jada McLeod.
And welcome to Wednesday.
Yes, yes.
So this morning we're starting off the conversation with some things in the news that you may have missed or not be aware of.
Yep.
So first up on the list.
Yeah, so British scientists are doing something pretty wacky. So it's the age of technology and it's bringing with it a bunch of advancements that we never really thought possible. Some are impressive and others are a bit extraordinarily wacky. But picture this. Some unfortunate incident happens where you lose a tooth or two. Just maybe now you can grow them back. Take a look.
Now, veneers and implants have never been as popular as more of us try to achieve the perfect smile. But what if there was another way that involved growing new teeth? Work by scientists here in London suggests it might soon be possible. Anna O'Neill reports.
It's an odontophile's dream here on the 27th floor of Guy's Hospital, London, but fortunately none of these teeth still bite. In the nearby laboratory, though, for more than a decade, dental scientists have been trying to grow one that can, and they've almost done it.
I'm a clinical dentist, but this idea of actually replacing in a biological way and regrowing a tooth was the one which drew me here in London, and I have stayed here and we have developed this research further.
Using a person's own cells to regrow an organ is thought to be less risky. And while these scientists may have grown a tooth, they haven't yet managed to harvest it for transplant.
Biological tooth is not like the implants or the dentures. It's artificial one, so it has its own vessels. It can grow by itself. So that is the really cool part, and it can interplay with your bones better than the artificial one.
So what we can see here, this is actually a section of little toothlets, tooth organoids, which were formed in a dish, in a lab. And you can see that already the cells which are responsible to make the enamel and the cells which are responsible for making the other parts of the tooth, such as the dentin or the dental pulp, they're all already committed and they will be forming the dental tissues once we implant them.
Prosthodontics is the art and science of replacing missing teeth, and at the moment the choices for patients are between dentures, bridges and implants.
All very inelegant solutions, but they work in a lot of cases. So this new technology of regrowing teeth is very exciting and it has potential to be a game changer for dentistry. Will it come in my lifetime of practice? Hopefully another 30 years? Probably not. Will it be in for my children's dental lives? Maybe. And my children's children, hopefully.
We are really filling in the gaps of knowledge in order to translate that into the lab and grow a tooth in a dish.
But it'll be a while before you're filling in the gaps in someone's mouth.
Yes.
Anna O'Neill, BBC London.
Wow. Yeah. So it's like, gone are the days where you have to use the artificial veneers or dentures.
Yeah. Because I mean, we're living in times where everything, anything can be grown, created in a lab. you know, from the strangest of things, like a tooth to a baby,
it's
a
so
full
weird
human.
to think about. Like, and it's not just the UK. In Japan, there's been some serious advancements as well. They've created like a drug that sort of jumpstarts the nubs. So you know how you have your first set and you grow to that as a child, you get the adult set.
Yeah.
They're saying is below there's some nubs that with whatever drug that they're trialing can jumpstart the growth. That is so interesting, and they're actually saying that they're in testing stages right now, but they're aiming to have some sort of like proof to show that it can be done on humans by 2030. Right. That's just now.
And then it can it will function as your regular adult teeth. That's interesting. I mean, I don't particularly, I've never really been keen on scientists trying to change what is how we're made, what is natural. It seems so unnatural because we've grown up knowing you have 2 sets of teeth in your entire lifetime, your baby teeth, and then that falls out, and then you have your adult teeth that stays with you for the rest of your life. So take care of your teeth. But now we can possibly have 3 sets of teeth. And as she said in the video, it may not be in the scientist. She said it may not be in her lifetime, but it would be there for her kids and her kids' kids possibly. So I guess we have some time before we can see this happen.
Yeah.
But
would you want to do that?
Just the
Something
thoughts
happens?
of it. I don't think. I mean, like I said, I'm not too keen on these scientific changes to our natural biology. But if it can happen, well.
I mean, I think it would benefit some people, especially those who have diseases where like they can't grow, like
and there are instances where health issues and your teeth may fall out. Some people fall and they break a tooth and it's out of their control. So I'm open to it, but it's still kind of weird for me. Yeah, it's still weird to think about.
But if you would like to stay up to date with this, the Kyoto University Hospital in Japan that's kind of spearheading this. So if you want to go take a look, you can check them out. So just moving on, the Ivy League University in Massachusetts, Harvard University, is in a bit of a standoff with President Donald Trump. He has been threatening to revoke their tax status, halting federal funding to the tune of more than $2 billion. Sit back and take a look.
Live now from Fox, I'm Andrew Kraft. What we want to do right now is take up some time to kind of dive into in detail for you this brewing battle between the Ivy League campuses like Harvard and Columbia and the Trump administration. Our colleague Fox's Rebecca Castor has a look at this battle. Let's watch.
The Trump administration is not soon forgetting the widespread pro-Palestine protests that swept across university campuses last year. Some of the international student leaders are facing deportation, and now federal funding is on the line.
We have been addressing the issue of anti-Semitism on campuses. There's been some grant funding and contract funding that we've reviewed, and some canceled and some we've put on hold.
Harvard is the latest school to have billions in federal grants and contracts put on hold after university leaders refused government demands, including to eliminate DEI programs, report foreign students here on visas who violate codes of conduct, and return to merit-based hiring and admissions.
These higher ed institutions that have fundamentally lost their way, U.S. taxpayer dollars should never be propping up anti-Semitism.
Harvard is the 7th school targeted by the Trump administration, but it's the first to push back, with the university's president saying in part, quote, "No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue."
Harvard University today said, go to hell.
Harvard's move also drawing praise from alum and former President Barack Obama, who says other institutions should follow suit. Harvard says it has already taken action against anti-Semitism on campus and argues many of Trump's demands are not related. In Washington, Rebecca Castor, Fox News.
Rebecca, thanks so much. Let's read in full former President Barack Obama's statement there just last night on X. He says this: Harvard has set an example for other higher ed institutions, rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom while taking concrete steps to make sure all students at Harvard can benefit from an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect. He says, let's hope other institutions follow suit. This was a focal point of the questioning to Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt today as well. Here's a brief moment. Let's watch.
Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. To follow up on something that you just said, why do Ivy League schools get so much federal funding?
It's a very good question, and it's a question the president has obviously raised in his discussions and negotiations with not just Harvard, but also Columbia and many other Ivy League institutions. We have the anti-Semitism task force, which the president promised and delivered on. The anti-Semitism task forces across the government, representatives from various federal agencies who meet on a weekly basis to discuss the question that you just raised. And I think a lot of Americans are wondering why their tax dollars are going to these universities when they are not only indoctrinating our nation's students, but also allowing such egregious illegal behavior to occur. The president at that time made it clear to the American public he was not going to tolerate illegal harassment and anti-Semitism taking place in violations of federal law. So the president made it clear to Harvard, follow federal law, no longer break Title VI, which was passed by Congress to ensure no student can be discriminated against on the basis of race, and you will receive federal funding. Unfortunately, Harvard has not taken the president or the administration's demands seriously. All the president is asking, don't break federal law, and then you can have your federal funding. I think the president is also begging a good question. More than $2 billion out the door to Harvard when they have a more than $50 billion endowment. Why are the American taxpayers subsidizing a university that has billions of dollars in the bank already? And we certainly should not be funding a place where such grave anti-Semitism exists.
All right, that was Caroline Leavitt just today at the press conference, the press briefing rather. Let's bring into the conversation Politico reporter, Irie Sentner. He joins me. Irie, thanks for being with us here. I know you've been following this extremely closely. Does Caroline Leavitt have a point? If $2.2 billion in federal funding is frozen, Harvard can't use it, they can't get their hands on it. Isn't that just a drop in the bucket for Harvard?
So, yes and no. Harvard has the largest endowment of any university in this country. It's over $50 billion. That said, this is going to affect Harvard's capacity to conduct research, cutting-edge research, essentially immediately. I should also mention that the reason that the Harvard president said no to the Trump administration is likely because its endowment is so large, and other schools, even other Ivy League schools, simply can't afford to do the same.
So we're just looking at some file footage here. So the assertion that maybe Harvard can absorb this, is that accurate to make?
I would say that the Harvard president likely made the decision to deny the Trump administration's demands because they thought that they could absorb it in the short term.
Okay. You know, Irie, can you kind of compare and contrast how Columbia University responded to, very similar demands from the Trump administration and how Harvard is going about it here?
Right. So last month, Columbia was given a very similar letter to the letter that the administration sent Harvard, and Columbia announced that it would capitulate to every single one of those demands. And the reason it did so, based on my conversations with people at the university, is because there was this understanding that the university could not function as usual, and that so much research would stop if the university could not unfreeze the $400 million in funds that the Trump administration had frozen to Columbia.
So we're taking a look at Columbia University's campus. This is from last spring. I was on the desk. I was covering these protests almost each and every day here. In the wake of that kind of battle with Trump and Columbia, the acting president stepped down and resigned, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
Yeah, so you're seeing some of the kind of impacts there as well. We also heard from President Trump on Truth Social today, Irie, threatening to revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status. What's the likelihood that the administration would ever strongly consider that or actually carry that out? Do you think that's going to happen? Is that on the table? Seriously?
Listen, we have seen the Trump administration go incredibly hard toward these schools. I should say that even after Columbia capitulated to those 9 demands, the Trump administration still has not unfrozen the funding. And so the stop work orders continue to go out. That research continues to not happen. We saw hours after the Harvard president announced that he would not comply with the demands, they almost immediately pulled over $2 billion in funding. And so, you know, I think the Trump administration has demonstrated that it's willing to go incredibly far. I will say, based on the conversations that I'm having with officials in the Trump administration, they're not concerned that Harvard and Columbia and other top universities in this country aren't going to be able to conduct the research that they've been conducting. They say that those schools have already lost their credibility, and they think it's more important that the universities take further action to address what they say is anti-Semitic behavior on their campuses.
So, Irie, you know, President Gerber at Harvard came out and essentially said, we're going to deal with this internally, though. But can, you know, Harvard administrators, can they be trusted? Can they convince, you know, their faculty, their students, their alumni, that they're going to, you know, take what the Trump administration is saying seriously to kind of clean their house inside? Are they going to take up those efforts? Gerber said he is, but can we trust that?
I mean, that's a question that you might ask the president of Harvard. Okay. I will say that schools across the board have taken action to reduce the anti-Semitism that we did see over the past few years. And the Harvard president claims that he will do that, but that remains to be seen.
So my colleague Peter Ducey today in the briefing asked, why do private universities, Ivy League universities, get any federal funding? Is that the right question to ask?
Well, Peter is sitting there in the front row. Yeah. It's a good question. I think it's important to understand that when you look at a giant university like Harvard with the giant endowment, much of those funds are restricted. So they're earmarked based, you know, from donors for very specific things. And sometimes that doesn't align with the research that that needs to happen, that receives federal funding from the federal government because the federal government believes that it is in the public's interest to conduct that research.
So just lastly for you, I mean, where does this go from here? Do other Ivy League institutions kind of need to be, you know, girding themselves for this similar fight? Where does your reporting take you next?
I mean, we have seen the Trump administration launch investigations into dozens of colleges, threaten to freeze funding, or in fact freeze funding for several of the top universities in this country. And so far, they have capitulated. We've seen many colleges make moves to comply with the Trump administration's demands. We've seen moves to get closer to the administration. For example, Dartmouth College recently hired as its top lawyer the former top lawyer at the RNC. That certainly doesn't hurt. But I think that we will see the Trump administration continue to pummel these universities, particularly those that don't go along with its demands.
No, and I think for this story, it's worth kind of highlighting, or at least enumerating. You say capitulated some of the demands that the Trump administration, you know, is making of these universities. Here were some they were making of Harvard here. You see there to eliminate DEI programs, report foreign students on visas who violate codes of conduct, and return to merit-based hiring and admissions. Are those similar demands kind of across the board or particular to Harvard?
Those demands are similar across the board. You know, I think it's on a case-by-case basis, but really the Trump administration and Republicans in general, they see universities specifically universities in the Ivy League, as places where liberalism and progressivism thrive and where people go to learn how to be Democrats, essentially. And so, you know, I think it's pretty clear that a lot of the culture war issues that the administration is broadly fighting, they believe that those start at these universities, and we see that in those demands for change.
All right, Irie Sentner there with Politico. Irie, thanks so much for coming on tonight. We'll talk soon.
Wow. We've had a lot of discussions on this, but we just want to clarify in terms of a simple understanding is that Harvard right now, they have a tax exempt status. So right now they don't really have to pay much in taxes. They're being subsidized by the government. And through this, there's a law that says that you can't engage in certain political activities. So like what they would call the anti-Semitism protests. They can't engage in those types of protests, and what Harvard has been doing was engaging in those things. So this federal law that they can't.
Not just Harvard, but it was a
lot of other universities.
Ivy League schools. This was last year. A lot of the Ivy League schools came together and they had these protests. So this is what Trump is doing now, saying that he laid some rules, and now you all have to abide by these rules, or you will lose your tax exempt status, which is what the law states, and that was the Johnson Amendment.
So the federal law is essentially saying you can't engage in these activities if you're going to be subsidized by the government. But a question that is on my mind is, why is it that this a university with such a large endowment, as they would have said, Harvard has more than $50 billion in the bank. Well, in terms of like their net worth, they have a lot of money. Why? So this $2 billion, what is that going to do? That's the reason why they can sort of quote unquote square up with the government, because they have a lot of money already in the bank.
But remember, as an Ivy League school, they have a lot of money, but they have to upkeep their status, and in order to do that, they have to be able to have good funding. So losing this tax exempt status, now they have to put out more. And which means hopefully they have to gain back a lot as well to upkeep their status.
The tax exempt status, I mean, and once you rationalize it, the investors, people who would have given money to certain research projects, that used to be a good thing for them. They didn't have to pay taxes on the money that they would have given. But now they would have to
do that if they don't abide by these rules. But you know, we also saw there were some critics arguing that Trump doing this is hypocritical, especially when it comes to the law, because they said he previously argued against the principles of the Johnson Amendment, because the Johnson Amendment kind of aligns with it silences free speech, and it silences religious groups and from expressing certain beliefs. And Trump argued on this amendment, saying that it should be cancelled completely. So now that he's using this amendment to come and fight a case, seems a bit two-sided, or we're not sure what his purpose is.
Classic Trump move, is what I would say. But I do think that he has a point on this, because again, he's backed by the law. He's backed by the law. You can't really say anything about that. You can't really argue with him on that.
Whether or not he is sitting on the fence or two-sided about this law, it is the law. Nothing has been changed about the law. So he, as the president, he can uphold the law, whether or not he agrees with it, you know. So
probably what's for me is not for you. What's not whatever the saying is. But I just found it was a very interesting conversation to have, because going back to the question of why universities, and again, it's not just universities, it's churches, these organizations get like a status that they don't have to, everybody else has to pay taxes but them. I think it's a question of, is this right? Yes, it's the law, and yes, it's what's done, but is it right?
It makes sense, because, okay, so the tax-exempt organizations include churches, charities, and universities. These are organizations that you kind of could understand why they would be tax exempt. It's not a business. It's not. It's not. No, it's not. It's not to say these are things where these are businesses or sole traders or liabilities where people, this is for themselves. A charity. Well, you kind of, I mean, putting a tax-exempt status on a charity, it comes like you're contributing to charity. It's a charity. Have a heart.
No, yes, but to some extent, I don't think that all charities they operate in the same way. A lot of people use, especially billionaires, they would have used charities as a way to kind of, I don't want to say, but get a lot of money, I could say that. And I think maybe personally, once you hit a certain threshold in terms of money, how much money that you have as an organization, pay some taxes. Pay some taxes.
You think so? Including churches?
Yes. Yes, those mega churches that have all these pastors and Rolls Royces and what's the watch? The Rolex and all that. Pay some taxes.
You pay no taxes.
Pay no taxes. I just think that it's what's best for, I guess in this case, the American people. But that's me, I'm not American, so.
Yeah.
But if you have something to say about this, you want to contribute, go to our Facebook, go to our YouTube. We're monitoring it. Right now, if you have a comment, something you want to just add, go. If you disagree with any of it, with Naomi or myself, talk to us. Let's see what it is you have to say. But moving swiftly along, this is quite a heartwarming story, in the midst of something not so great. So during a 5.2 magnitude earthquake, a San Diego zoo saw an amazing display of care and affection by none other than elephants. Take a look. You see how they all handle it together?
Yeah, so I actually, when I saw this video, I looked at some facts about elephants to understand why they did what they did. And a few that came up. So elephants are highly social animals, right? And they usually stick together. And they're led by the oldest female in the park, which I think is so sweet. And then also, if you notice in the video, they kind of started moving before the earthquake happened, right? So the elephants' feet, below their feet, is extremely sensitive, and they're able to feel vibrations before. So they can tell when a natural disaster is about to occur. They can feel seismic movements in the earth from extreme depths before it comes up, and I found that was so cool.
That's very interesting.
Yeah,
because they really did start moving beforehand. It's just like, did they know
it made sense? Yeah. So they feel it coming, and then that's how they start. And then they're also very maternal. So a lot of the females in the packs, they come together and they usually help the mother take care of the calf.
Yes, it's so interesting to see, because they really and truly, they felt it, they scattered, okay, something is going on, let me just protect my young. That is so sweet.
Yeah, the young in the pack is the young for everybody. They're really amazing creatures. And I think humans need to take some
notes. Yes, I think that's just a very sweet video that we saw. I think it was from the BBC, and well, what you would have just saw was the video of it. I really hope that
the San Diego Zoo.
Yes, I really do hope that you guys enjoyed that, because it was really sweet. I just found it was really sweet. And yes, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be continuing with some discussions. We're sort of veering away from the political side today, taking a break from that, but we do still have some interesting discussions coming up, so stay with us.
I am Dr. Delphina Ovid, your friendly neighborhood dentist. At Community Hospital Dental Clinic, we offer examinations which include x-rays, basic oral cancer screening, and a treatment plan. We also offer cleanings, fillings, extractions, root canal treatment, and complete and partial dentures. Remember, you don't have to brush and floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
Where good private health care is affordable.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So you cannot stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man is being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Welcome back to the program. So, moving along, today we're joined by Ms. Scarlett Howery, Vice President of Public Workforce Solutions at DeVry University. With nearly 2 decades of experience at DeVry and Keller, she's been at the forefront of creating meaningful connections between education and employment for adult learners as a passionate advocate for accessible, high-quality education, especially for first-generation college students. Scarlett is here to share more about the university's exciting Bridge to Brilliance initiative, which is now expanding into 16 Caribbean countries. We'll talk access, affordability, and how this program is helping shape the future of global learning. So good morning, Ms. Howery, and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Great.
So, what inspired DeVry to extend the scholarships to the Caribbean? It's like, what was the thought process that linked this?
Yeah, we have had a significant partnership in the Bahamas for many, many years and have seen success with learners having access to our education, which starts with STEM to business and into even healthcare. And this is just a perfect timing for us to expand the Bridge to Brilliance initiative so that others within the Caribbean, 16 additional countries, including Trinidad, have access to this education. You know, our program supports learners with gaining skills that are most in demand. So when you think about the industries that really drive Trinidad and other countries within the Caribbean, those programs that give those skills to learners are part of the work that we're doing with our Bridge to Brilliance.
Right. How were the 16 Caribbean countries selected for this program?
Yeah, these were countries that we knew had a need for the additional educational access, and part of that partnership that we've had for many years in the Caribbean helped us to inform making the decision about where we expanded. And timing, as I've mentioned before, is just right for us to continue to expand and provide access to those learners.
I like the name, it's Bridge to Brilliance.
Yeah.
So as VP of the Public Workforce Solutions, how do you see this initiative addressing the workforce gaps in the Caribbean? And is it that you're trying to scale Caribbean learning to what the U.S. has?
Yeah, so think about industries like manufacturing. We know that in the Caribbean there's a significant need there. Think about finance and banking in areas that are in hospitality and just business. These are all areas in which We know that there are expanding needs for skills, and many of these industries, I won't even say many, all of these industries are highly impacted by technology, AI, data analytics. All of those are impacting each of those industries in significant ways. That's what our programs do. They provide learners with not just the skills in those particular areas, but we are informed by what industry needs when it comes to those skills. So if incorporating that into our degree programs is a big part of the work that we do, so that learners can get the degree online and stay in their home country and be able to give back and be a part of the economic engine within your communities.
On that, can you just expand a little bit and tell us exactly what is this Bridge to Brilliance initiative before we continue?
Yeah, perfect. So Bridge to Brilliance does offer a scholarship to learners, so up to 50% off of our tuition, as well as support. So think about learners who need to have tutoring and additional resources around networking and creating access through certifications for particular roles. We have a program, several programs that are our scholars programs. One of them is Women in Tech, another is Future Cyber Defenders. Learners would have access to those scholars programs so that they not only get the degree, but they can continue to get into the career that they're looking to get into and expand their knowledge there and stay in those fields. So the combination of access through financial support, the scholarship, as well as support on the academic side, which is our scholars programs and our culture of care, is truly what this Bridge to Brilliance program is about.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the types of scholarships for this program and who can qualify for that?
Yeah, so any learner who is in these 16 states that wants to earn an undergraduate certificate, bachelor's, associates, or even at the graduate level, if you want to earn a master's degree, can qualify for this program. We will support them with admissions support. So each of these students will have an admissions advisor that will support them through the entire application process so that learners understand what steps they need to take to qualify for the scholarship. But ultimately, if you are in one of these 16 countries and you are looking to gain access to a degree, our goal here is to give you greater access. And just to give you a few ideas of some of those countries, think about Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Belize, Bermuda, the British Virgin Islands, as I've mentioned, Trinidad, Turks and Caicos. All of these are islands and countries that would qualify for the scholarship and support.
How have you guys been in cooperation with the governments, specifically with Trinidad, when it comes to being able to afford this type of service? We have something in place called GATE, where the government may subsidize government funding may subsidize learning. Do you guys have something like that in place, or are you working alongside with the government, or is it something completely different?
We are currently working with all of our 16 countries to find ways to expand access. We have not, within Trinidad itself, established that type of a partnership yet, but we are certainly in process of looking to do that work. One example of that, not in Trinidad, but in Jamaica. I'll be in Jamaica in just a few weeks for the Employer Federation Conference, where we'll partner with local employers and local government to bring access or to create greater access for those learners. So just what you shared around finding ways to make sure that even with a scholarship, it is still accessible, the cost is still accessible to learners.
I want to know so one of the key goals of this initiative is making education more accessible. So how exactly are you all, would this happen? I mean, is it that if a person gets a scholarship to the university, is it accessible in terms of they can stay home and attend the university online? Is it a physical attendance? How exactly does it work?
Great question. We're excited about the opportunity because it is completely online. We have for many, many decades been an online university that offers flexibility to learners so that they can take their classes from their home country, but still have a quality education. Many of our classes have live lectures where you're still having a conversation and you're still able to interact with students in your classroom, but virtually. And still get the same great experience you would have if it was a physical location as well. We've been doing it and innovating around online learning for several decades now. So learners are able to earn that degree, and once they complete their degree, they have the option to stay in their home country and, as I mentioned before, contribute back to their local economy through careers that are in demand in those countries.
Right. So does DeVry have anything in place for, with that in mind, to ensure that it's online? Sorry, no. My bad. Does DeVry have anything in place to support the students who may face technical issues, connectivity issues within certain countries within the region?
Yes, we do. So part of our culture of care, which is embedded in everything that we do, as well as through the admissions process, all the way through students being in classes and supporting them through career support, all the way as they get towards the end of their degree and into their career. Part of that is providing them with technical support as well. If students are having challenges with being able to access courses, log in, part of this culture of care is to be flexible with them and tailor the experience to their needs. We want to meet students where they are. We understand that there will be challenges, and that's no matter if they are in Trinidad or if they're in the United States, those challenges occur, and part of the work that we do is to support learners through that as well. So technical support comes with that. And we would be reaching out to every single student who we see as having an issue to ensure that their experience is as good as it can be.
All right. So, Ms. Harry, let's get into pricing. What is expected of the learner?
Yeah, so our pricing is, there's a scholarship that is a part of this Bridge to Brilliance program that is providing learners with a 50% tuition savings. So if you are getting an undergraduate certificate, an associate or bachelor's degree on the undergraduate level, that would be a savings of over 50% off of your tuition, which is really significant. And on the graduate side as well, that scholarship is something that is applied from day one for learners. And also there is a waived application fee. So learners who are even interested in the program and want to go through the admissions process would not have to pay anything out of pocket to start the process of enrollment into the program. We then provide every single learner with a financial aid advisor who will support them from day one with working through what it would take for them to pay for their courses. And they will be there every step of the way, not just from the beginning, but throughout their entire degree program. They'll have a student support advisor who understands the financial side and the academic side of it to ensure that they not only start, but they finish the degree and have the resources to do that.
So I sort of have a two-part question here. Number one would be, are all of your courses accredited? And two, I think I forgot my last question, but are all the courses accredited?
They are, yes, we are fully accredited. And I think what's important is that we have been a partner in the Caribbean for many years, one of our partners being the Bahamas Institute of Business and Technology. We've had a partnership for a very long time with that organization and continue to look for additional partnerships with institutions and additional accreditation as well, but we are fully accredited.
Yeah, that was my next question. I wanted to know that. How does DeVry ensure that its online programs align with Caribbean workforce needs? You know?
Yes, that's so important. We do that no matter where we are, right? Even in the states, when we're thinking about individual states, we're thinking about what's driving industry in that state and how we support those learners with the skills they'll need in that state. The same thing in the Caribbean. Each of these 16 countries are unique and different, and we want to make sure that our programs are just as focused on those industry skills that are needed within the Caribbean. So partnering with business will be an extremely important part of this work. It's why, as I mentioned before, heading into Jamaica is going to be really important for us so that we get to learn a little bit more about what those employer needs are. We want to do the same thing in every one of these 16 countries as we move forward. We know that this is about career education, about gaining the career at the end of this degree. So getting the skill is really important, and our students are truly inspired to get the degree, but ultimately they're doing it because they want to find a career that is going to sustain them and their families. And that's the work that we'll do by building these partnerships.
Right. How exactly would DeVry track the long-term success of this new initiative of scholarship recipients?
Yeah, that's an easy one. For us, it's about graduation rates and learners gaining that career. So we track several indicators along the way. The number of students who actually enroll in these programs, the number of students who persist in then graduate from the programs, and then working alongside the employers to make sure that they finally get into that career, either before they graduate, right? It might be an apprenticeship or an internship of some sort, or immediately after graduation.
All right, so can you walk me through what the experience of a scholarship recipient is going to be like? So I'm sitting at home, I'm listening to this interview, and I want to learn more, and I really want to be a part of DeVry. What is my experience going to look like?
Yeah, so first thing you're going to do is you're going to log in on your computer into devry.edu. In fact, there's a partnership link that's partners@devry.edu. When you log in, you will immediately see a page that will give you access to all of the different programs that we offer so that you can choose from those programs. You will then be given access to an admission advisor who will walk you through your program so you understand. They'll do this virtually while you're on. And what's great about this is that in many cases, they'll join live with you just like I am right now and walk you through the entire application process. Your faculty, when you start classes, will be there live for you, as I've mentioned before. So there will be days of the week where you'll have a live lecture and you'll join with other students from all over the world as a part of our program to gain those skills that you need. And throughout your time, you'll have access to career advisors, a student support advisor who will be there if for some reason you've not logged in when you should have logged in for your class. They'll be there to support you there, to understand what your needs are. But throughout the entire process, you'll have a team of advisors who will be there to support you, guide you every step of the way. When we talk about care and the culture of care, we truly mean that we want to hold your hand as long as you want us to hold it throughout the process so that you gain the skills, but you also have support and get to the finish line, which is that career.
So if you know anything about me, I need to bring AI into almost any conversation. I just think it's such a great topic. So do you guys have any AI learning tools or anything to assist with that process in any part of the university?
Yeah, so here's what I'll say is AI is infused into our courses, right? So part of the learning that you'll get within our degree programs is how AI is impacting different industries and particular roles within industries. And you'll also get access to be able to be trained on those tools as well within your degree program. At the same time, you'll also have AI to support you in your classroom and during your experience. So if you have questions, if you need tutoring, at 3 in the morning, there will be tools available to you so that we can support you throughout your experience. So not only do you learn it in the classroom, AI for the industry, but you also are experiencing that as a part of being a student at the university.
Oh, that's really nice. I actually want to, talk about you a little bit. I know you are a first-time graduate yourself. So, what does this, being that, what does this initiative mean to you personally?
Oh man, it means the world, right? I really believe that providing access is truly one of the most important things that we could ever do, is by giving learners the opportunity to have access to skills that are most in demand from industry is so important to giving them access to changing their world, right? Changing their lives, changing their family's destiny. So that is an important piece of the work that I've been doing this work for more than 20 years at DeVry University, and built many partnerships throughout the country and throughout many other parts of the world. And this is an exciting opportunity for us to expand into the Caribbean and bring this type of support in learning to learners within the Caribbean.
Love that.
Can you give us an idea of some sort of the names of some of the courses? I know you would have said something about AI. The names sound very interesting.
Yeah, so we'll give you just a little bit about some of our degree programs. So we have at the undergraduate level certificates in programming and IT essentials, in networking, as well as in cybersecurity. Really important. If you are anywhere in the country or in the Caribbean, you know that cybersecurity data is something, cybersecurity crimes are on the rise. It's important for us to have individuals that can support that work and understand how to fight cyber criminals. In our bachelor's degree, we also have on the business side, accounting and finance. We have healthcare technology as well. And if you get into our master's degree programs, you're talking about accounting and finance management, so our MAFM, our MBA, the Masters of Business Administration, and even programs in project management. All of those are informed and have a significant amount of AI involved in them. So if you think about, in some cases, we will have courses that will be AI for leaders. And what that means is that you'll learn different software, but also how to think critically about where AI can be used to make your company more efficient. We even have programs that are for those who want to be entrepreneurs. So if you are in those 16 countries in the Caribbean, Trinidad, and you're thinking about being a business owner and you want to make sure you have the right skills, we have programs for you as well.
All right. I also wanted to ask another two-parter. DeVry is for the adult learners. So is there an age where you have to be 18?
So you do. We do allow students who are in that are below the age of 18 with parental support that may want to be a part of this program. Please just reach out to our admissions team and they can walk you through the process for those who might be younger than 18. But for the most part, our program is, however, for the adult learner. Our average age of our students are well into the upper 28 to 32 is a typical age of our learner. And they usually are someone who is currently working and looking to either expand in their career or they're looking to switch into maybe a different career. And that's the work that we do so well, is helping learners just like that who are looking to get into careers that are shaped by technological change.
Yes, I love that. And my next question would be, how long on average does it take a learner to complete a degree with you all?
Yeah, so on the undergraduate side, 2 years, 8 months is the average amount of time for a bachelor's degree. Now that is shorter than the typical 4-year degree, and that's because our classes are year-round. So learners can take classes every 8 weeks. Year-round, there's 3 semesters in the year, and so there's no stopping. You can get done in 2 years, 8 months, so you'll be well ahead of your colleague next to you who might be in a 4-year degree.
Yeah. Are there any prerequisites for before joining the program, especially for the Caribbean students?
Yeah, so as a part of the admissions process, learners will be asked to do several things. So they will take an assessment, and that assessment is in reading, writing, arithmetic, and algebra, but don't be afraid. We will support you through that process as well. They will need to provide that they have completed their high school education as well. So we will ask for transcripts, and we work with our admissions team will work with our registrar to ensure that that process is effective. So yes, there are prerequisites to make sure that you're ready for this college level work, but we will walk you through the entire process.
This is lovely. Any hidden, anything that the Caribbean National should know about going into this? Anything at all hidden cost, those sorts of things?
I wouldn't say so. I will say that we will make sure throughout the entire enrollment process, as you work with your admissions advisor, that there are no surprises. You'll know right up front what the cost of the education is, right? Including books, any other additional fees. All of that will be a part of the admissions interview, and is a part of when we're talking about the scholarship. We'll also share with you how that scholarship will impact that cost for you. So no surprises throughout the entire enrollment process as we work alongside a advisor to support you with that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, before we close off, can you just, somebody who might be on the fence about, this initiative, this program, just say something to them that, can encourage them to take this step, in their education?
Yeah. I mean, education, technology, careers are changing so quickly. The skills that are needed are continuously changing. I think it's been said that if you're earning a college education right now, within 3 to 5 years, some of the skills that you've learned will be obsolete, and it will be time for you to upskill and to reskill. So lifelong learning is a real thing. So if you have any thoughts of how do you gain the skills that you need and who's going to support me through that process, know that DeVry in our Bridge to Brilliant initiative is here to support you every step of the way, be it your first time in college or continuing on with a degree program. We're here every step of the way to support you through the process. So we encourage you to find out more at devry.edu about the program, and for us to be able to support you through that admissions process.
All right, and just one more question for the learner. After they've completed the degree, they've accomplished that, what's next for them? What do you hope is next for them?
The career. We are going to get you in contact with you'll be even before you finish the degree, you'll be in contact with your career advisor, who will be there supporting you with your resume, doing mock interviews with you. We use AI just to do some of those mock interviews and to help you with your resume as well. They'll be there every step of the way. We have access to our employer partners who have many open positions. So we'll give you access to those tools as well. But ultimately, our goal is to get you into the career. So this is about getting you the right skills that are informed by industry, and then supporting you into those careers.
All right. Thank you so much. It was interesting learning about this.
Yeah. No, we just want to wish you and DeVry University all the best, and everyone who joins, because this initiative is one that I think the Caribbean is necessary. Having another option in terms of education for people of the Caribbean is a beautiful thing, because I think we need more of it. So
especially with the ones
much.
that have the focus on the new technology. What we're going into. So I do appreciate speaking with you, Miss Howard. We do appreciate speaking with you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. All right. We do hope that you have a beautiful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. So to our viewers, we're just going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with you. Stay with us.
Thank you. Bye. Good morning to you.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not
game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
They believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
FanZone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available. SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
Welcome back to the program this morning. It is Wednesday, so you all know what that means. Unfortunately, my co-host, Jada McLeod, is not going to be joining me for this segment. We have an animal that she's terribly afraid of, and it happens. So we've given her the bly this morning to not be here, but I will be the strong one and stick through this for your sake. So, as per usual, we have Mr. Ricardo Mead joining us on the program for Wild Wednesday. Good morning, Mr. Mead.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and good morning to all our friends and followers out there. It's Wild Wednesday.
Yes.
Time to get wild.
Time to get wild. So, what wild animal do we have on the program this morning?
Well, with us this morning is a very storied animal who has a heavy load to bear, as it were, since we in Trinidad and Tobago and people around the world always lie about this animal. Lots of lies. I mean, people have expanded that to call them myths and fabricate, whatever you want. It's not the truth. 99.9% of what you've heard about this animal is a lie.
Okay.
You know, according to the Parang man, did as lie, did as lie, lie, did as lie.
So,
on the poor.
Before we get into what the animal is, tell us what are some of the lies, some of the myths about this creature.
For example, there's a movie at about a particular one, and in that movie, in the course of 24 hours, this animal consumed about 12 large human beings. Yeah, it's not even a dinosaur, not even the largest dinosaur that ever roamed the earth could have done that. In 24 hours, this animal consumed 12 large human beings. Not little babies, large human beings.
If I'm correct, in that movie, the animal was massive. The animal was towering over buildings, and I mean, the animal is huge.
What are you thinking about, Godzilla?
No, I mean, the animal was really big.
Uh-huh.
In the movie, I just know, like, they had whatever houses or science labs or was in that movie. The animal was just as big as
right,
that.
and crushing the houses
Exactly.
and eating these people voraciously, and oh my gosh, it's stuff like that that really messes with people's minds.
Well, yeah, that's the same thing. It comes like Jaws or a shark movie. They make sharks look so bad that people are the same thing you're saying about this creature, the same thing that shark experts will say about sharks. Oh, sharks don't bite. Sharks are not going to do you anything. Sharks, they're just curious animals. What?
Yeah, well, if you display tendencies like their food, you're telling them, come to me, come to me.
Okay.
You know, it's like, you know, calling a puppy and putting your fingers like they come to you. So, it's, you know, we do that in the water without knowing it, you know. So how many shark attacks have you known in Trinidad and Tobago?
Not much.
Just one last year in Tobago. And then the science kicked in. We thought, oh, my sharks, and they're attacking, and they're going to go out there. People went out there now attacking sharks in their waters, okay? And then the developers would do that destroyed turtle eggs and hatchlings and so on there, created a scent in the water. And the shark's natural part of its food chain is the turtles. Yes. So you eat turtles, and now you smell it all around you, turtle in the water, and then there's a human turtling in the water. You know, the human got bitten, he survived. Even the human isn't mad at the sharks, but the locals were out there trying to kill every shark they came across. And that's where we take things absolutely too far without trying to understand the logic and the science behind it. That's what saves us, not your myths and your beliefs and your customs. You know, it's reality. We have to deal with the reality. And the reality is these animals are part of our ecosystem, a very important part of our ecosystem. We have about 49 different ones here in Trinidad and Tobago, and we need all. They all do different things, from eating little bugs, little lizards, eating each other on occasions, and then now a lot of the prey items that they consume are pests towards us. So much more people die from leptospirosis in Trinidad and Tobago than from snake bites. But people are afraid of snakes.
Oh, well,
so it's out the bag.
The
cat is now out of the bag. So since the cat is out of the bag, we might as well let the snake out of the bag. All right? So ladies and gentlemen, introducing Cada. Cada is a mackerel, otherwise known as a red-tailed boa constrictor. So See, and immediately we get to see her beautiful red tail. This is why it's called a red-tailed boa constrictor. Some of the redness varies, but compared to the rest of her body, her tail is pretty much red. Okay, and she is an absolute darling of an animal, and you're going to help me here with this beautiful girl. You know, I brought a girl's, you know, it's girl power, and you can relate and stuff like that. So I'm just going to like extend her across there. She's a big, beautiful girl. This is Kada, our red-tailed boa constrictor, a.k.a. Macawel. There she is right there, folks. Okay? She is not vicious. She was actually surrendered to us by people who have had her for quite a while. And they said, you know, we just can't handle her anymore. We've had her since small. So she has some bruises on her nose, unfortunately, because of the enclosure they had her in. At night, she would rub her nose on it, and it sort of created a sort of permanent bruising on her nose. Yeah. But she is an amazing girl, and just a muscular, lovely beast, and we just want to get her extended all the way across there. You know, she's a little cooler this morning, because it's cool. She was nice, wrapped up and warm in the bag. You know, so things that people know. You know, yeah, it's a little cool.
Snakes are, I could be wrong. I don't want to butcher this. Snakes are warm-blooded animals.
Not warm-blooded, no. But they're not cold-blooded either.
Okay.
So we are warm-blooded. We are human beings. Yeah. We are mammals. And just like birds, we burn a lot of calories. And when we burn calories, if you burn something, you will get what? Heat.
Right.
Right? So suddenly it seems like during COVID we discovered that we're warm-blooded, and all of a sudden we're testing each other and we're checking temperature and so on like that there. Okay, in Celsius and in Fahrenheit. So we have a standard body temperature. When we go above that, we have a
fever.
Right. And when we go below that, we are dead. Pretty much. Pretty much. Okay, you are dead. You know, you say old and cold, that means your next step is death. Okay, once your furnace stops burning, once the fire goes out within you, your body temperature will plummet. The only thing that will keep your body temperature stable is whatever temperature it is at. Right? So they put you on ice and preserve you, and then everything else goes from there. With snakes and reptiles on the whole, it's not the same. They do not have that furnace. They do not burn anything, not the way we do. They are, the true term, and I want people out there to understand, never say reptiles are cold-blooded. That is very wrong. And people are beginning to learn that now, so people will start to correct you on that. So even people write in their papers and so on and put a cold-blooded snake, no. The proper term is ectotherms. Ecto meaning outside, like Iron Man's exoskeletal suit, right, outside, and therms is for temperature. So outside temperature. Instead of cold-blooded, say they're ectotherms, or even if you say solar, you are correct. And I'll explain how we've come to that. Nothing about their body makes them warm. They don't burn anything that way. But what they do is they use the external or exto temperature. They absorb that temperature, right? So in an air-conditioned environment, she'll be a lot cooler. Yeah. When she goes out in the sun, after 8, she's going to get very warm and much more active. And this now explains where you find reptiles throughout the world. In the coldest regions of the world, there are no reptiles. And the reason for that is quite simple. They cannot control their body temperature when it's freezing. Yeah. So in temperate zones, like in the US, for example, they do something incredible called hibernation. So in the winter months, because it's so cold, they cannot get their body temperature up. They just go to sleep and sort of cuddle up in a little hole, a cave, just to sort of keep enough body temperature to stay alive. When spring comes about, they start warming up and they start becoming active. Summer months, full-blown, they feed like crazy, they breed and so on like that there, have their young ones, and then fall is their last chance to consume and find a spot to go to so that they will be able to survive the winter. So they go through their seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall. Summer and spring are their warm months. Fall, the temperature literally starts falling as they get ready to hibernate. Yeah. Now, in a colder region, if they try that, because the cold is so long, they will not warm up and they will not become active. So they will permanently go to sleep. Yeah. So that's why in cold regions, no snakes or very few. Okay, but warm regions like ours, we have 49 different species. Yes. So it's just, we are so blessed in having all these animals here.
Are we really?
Yes. Imagine all those big rats that the Europeans brought. Remember when we spoke about the plague?
Yes.
Right. So they brought that. And that's the thing that amazes me. After the plague ravaged Europe, they did not do due diligence and still allowed those massive rats, Rattus rattus, or the Norway rat, to come to the New World. But that's what humans do. We sort of infect and pollute and mess up all over. And the only thing that really stood between us and a possible outbreak of the plague and even worse stuff would be the predators.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main predators of rats is this beautiful girl here.
Yeah.
She loves her rats. You know, she would give up anything for a rat.
Yeah.
She loves a rat.
So, what's her name again?
Kata.
Kata.
Yes.
Kata. So is Kata big for a mackerel or is she small for a mackerel?
No, she's still small. She can still put on size back on. We had a rescue earlier this year. I went and I rescued a male that was a little smaller than Kata. The males are smaller. And the guy's like, oh, this big snake and so on. And so I was in South. I was in the Faizabad region. And I got a call also now for a, what do you saw her tongue?
No, she opened her mouth.
Oh,
I didn't know she could
lovely.
do that.
But that's how they eat.
So why is she doing it now?
Well, she just yawned, that's all.
Oh, I've never seen a snake open its mouth. It was slimy and...
Yawn there, you know. She won't bite, you know. She bites me. And even if she bites, then, you know, she's a constrictor. So she is non-venomous.
Okay, well, I didn't know.
Yeah, constrictor is non-venomous.
Okay.
Okay, remember, we have only 4
venomous,
highly venomous snakes. Well, there's different categorizations of venom. And we need to understand them. So we have only 4 highly venomous snakes. And those are the ones that matter because those have the potential to do harm to a human being. Mm-hmm. There are other snakes that have a mild venom, and they are of almost no consequence. Firstly, it's very difficult for them to bite you. And if they do, it's much akin to a bee sting. So that's not going to bother anybody unless you're really allergic to bee stings. Yeah. But the 4 highly venomous ones would be the 2 species of corals and the 2 species of mapipi. And hopefully we have Wild Wednesdays where we can deal with those. So yes, I will bring a highly
But
venomous.
you'll keep that in a cage?
Well, yeah. I mean, I know you'd love to hold it.
No.
Why not?
No, because snakes can sense fear.
Really? Can you sense fear? No.
I feel like most animals can sense fear from a human, or they can sense some type of emotion because, okay, when we initially pull Kate out the bag, right? Mm. She doesn't want to come by me because she can sense the slight hesitation.
All right, you want the truth and the science behind it?
Yes.
The reptilian brain is very simple. It's not complex at all. So some of our human attributes and feelings and emotions cannot be ascribed to them. Okay, I know some snake people told me, no, my snake loves me and this and that and the other. Comfort is not love.
Yeah.
Okay, and acceptance is still not love. Mm-hmm. And conditions, because sometimes it has to do with conditions beyond what you are possibly able to comprehend. Mm-hmm. Okay, your smell. Certain perfumes. Mm-hmm. I usually tell people who smoke to stay away from snakes because I have noticed within my time dealing with them, which has been almost half a century, that they tend to be a little more agitated towards smokers. Okay. All right, so simple things like that. You have to know, you need to have enough data to analyze it and say, okay, this works and this doesn't. And of course, with however you go with something, okay, all mammals give live birth. And then here comes who? Snake. The duck-billed platypus. Oh. Mammal, but it lays eggs. You know, so there's always, no, it's not, it is a mammal. Okay. But it lays eggs, so there's always the exception. There's always one animal or one situation that says, here, hold my beer. I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah. And that's what makes life really fascinating. Okay, the 2 mammals of which I know that lay eggs, which is just makes no sense, both live in Australia. Right? So people don't know why you want to go to Australia. Well, I have got to see these things and some other, you know, when 80% of the snakes there are venomous. I got to be there. I got to see this. So at some point in time, when I come back or something like that and you bring me on the show and I say, morning, mate. How's it going, mate? You know why? I would have fulfilled my dream of getting down to Australia and just, you know, getting into the more wildlife, you know. It's exciting.
Yes.
You know, it's exciting. And for me, totally love my country, totally love what we have here. I still think there's so much more for me to see, but I think I'm running out. I'm running out. Yes. It's been a while I've been doing this. I'm running out of wild to give me that next wow. But don't get me wrong, every single time I see a snake, it's never going to be, oh, look, it's just a mackerel. No, it's never going to be that way. Everyone has a different skin pattern. Everyone is different. So it's always good. It's like meeting a person. Okay, everybody, for someone like me, you think like people like myself who are into animals are not into people? That's quite the opposite with me.
Yeah.
Okay, because I put you in the same box with the animals. Okay, and I analyze you the same way. You have features, you have a look, you have a smell. There's so much about you as a person that even you sometimes don't know that you exude. And I appreciate that, and I understand that, and I note that. So every person, from the lowliest that you may want to call a low person to the highest high, we can learn something from them. We can gain a spirit from them. There's a certain energy that everybody has.
Yes.
And even in the worst situation, we can learn, and we can understand, and we can move forward. So I have a question this morning.
Tables have turned.
Why? That's my question. Why?
Why?
With the diversity that existed in Garden Eden, why, woman? Why, woman? Eh? You couldn't talk to the rabbit? Well, that apple looked juicy, didn't it? Okay, now I'm just using that as a joke, but the thing is a reference. Do not use your religious persuasion or tilt to persecute the animals. Okay, would your God really want you to do that? Think about it. That's one of his creatures. Okay, and so many people, I said, if he gave us these to our benefit, why do we destroy them?
But did he give us the snake?
What are you questioning God's power and authority? Shall I get Morgan Freeman here, the voice of God, to say I put these creatures here for your benefit?
I don't know.
The benefit?
No, I don't know too much. I don't think this was a gift.
You don't think it was a gift? So let's remove them from our world as they have done in London. And then you go in London and you get on the eye.
Okay,
and you see rats that are bigger than cats.
So let's say, yes, so these animals, all animals, right, were created by God. But if we're looking at religious belief, then snakes, they were cursed. From the beginning of time, in the garden, and they were cursed. They're a cursed animal.
Was it the snake that was cursed, or was it the woman that was cursed? Let's question that now. The snake did his part.
Right.
You know, and we are here now according to one religious belief because a particular gender accepted the bribe, as it's so.
Well, yes, humans were cursed at that point, but the snake as well. So it was humans and the snake that was cursed. But you see, this could be a broader discussion. But we need facts and references that I don't currently have on me. But the snake, I'm not going to crucify the snake for being a snake. It's a snake. And once it causes no harm and live in peace.
But you know, in a place where they do cause harm, the cobra, all right, India has lots of cobras.
Is that the one with the... No, that's a rattlesnake.
The one that spreads its head,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, right. Cobra. Millions of cobras across India. They do not kill them.
Yes, yeah.
Do you know why?
They consider them to be spiritual beings of some sort.
But besides that, I remember seeing a video where the cobra slid across the child, and all the mother was hoping for is that the child did not awake and startle the cobra so that it got defensive. Because the cobra wasn't there to kill the child. The cobra wasn't there to hurt the family. You know what the cobra is looking for? Rats. And in a place where you have rampant poverty and lots of people living way below poverty line and malnutrition, their food stocks are the most important thing.
Yeah.
And now, if a rat gets in there and destroys their grain, their corn, whatever, you face starvation, not just for one person, but for probably an entire village. Who stands between them and these rats? The deadly cobra. So the friend of my enemy is my friend.
Yes.
Okay? Because imagine having to throw out all your grain stocks for the whole month because it was contaminated by rats. who stands to defend them? These are the avengers. These are the defenders right there. And all you're required to do is have a little caution towards them. You can't have caution towards rats. Once humans are around, they will find their way. And as you sleep, they will bite through the wooden doors. I've seen a rat bite through a wooden door over the course of a week to get into a house, to spread leptospirosis. That is deadly to children, elderly folks, or even people whose immunosystems are compromised. It's deadly. So that's why I said sometimes I think the average is 15 people a year die from leptospirosis in Trinidad and Tobago. You know how many people have died from snake bites in the past 50 years?
I would assume not as much.
10. So once every 5 years, someone, unfortunately, will die from a snake bite.
Right.
Okay? Now, not saying that not more people are bitten, but they don't die. Okay? I had people come to do stories at the center, and the cameraman was showing me, one guy was showing me, yeah, I was bitten by a snake, and I was, you know, in the hospital for a while. One of my fault. You know, I've known people who've been bitten, and they're functioning, well, kind of normally. Okay? Life is back. They didn't die. But leptospirosis. I remember the Great Flood. It was 2010 we had the Great Flood. Well, we had the Great Flood. We call it the Great Flood. It was probably around 2010, one of the worst flooding in Trinidad. And I think there were, at one point in time at San Fernando General Hospital, 25 cases of leptospirosis. And several of those people died. And no hop-up, there's no, because it's a little disease that you can't see and really identify and point or even pelt a snake at or chop with a cutlass, it's kind of safe, okay? And because it involves our activities and a lot of times our dirtiness, our filth, that would encourage a lot of the rats into our areas and into our households, all right? So at the end of the street, when you pile up all that garbage and the rats are jumping off, I've passed neighborhoods. I've gone into neighborhoods to rescue animals and I've seen the piles of garbage on the street corner. And as I walk past, the rats start jumping off and standing up in front of me like, what are you doing in this area, partner? You understand? That is where the problem is. But those people would never say, hey, look at those rats, that's a problem, let's deal with that. But if there is one snake in that garbage, they're eating the rats. The whole of Trinidad are knowing that. That making FaceTube, YouTube, every single thing in it. X, Twitter, everything. That making because it have a snake there.
Yeah. So it's suggested, I mean, if you see a snake like this in your yard, just leave it. Just...
Well, for the snake's sake, and for your sanity, just to an extent, I would suggest you call us or call, you know, the police, and they have communication with us and other organizations to have them removed. Okay? That's a lot of times the best thing, just to have it removed, not killed, just removed, relocated. Okay, you're scared. So many people said, and they sent me pictures and said, there's a snake in my backyard. I said, do you need help with it? They said, no, we just leave them. I'm just showing you it's a lovely snake. I said, yes, indeed, it's a lovely. It's so refreshing to get a phone call like that, as opposed to I can't go back in the house. It have a snake. I'm going to leave. I call the real estate. We're selling. We're moving. I can't live in Santa Cruz no more.
Yeah.
You know, but that is the reality. We get these calls all the time. You know, I said, ma'am, you're in Santa Cruz, there are going to be snakes around. Well, I go and leave this area, I can't live here. And see, oh my, you wouldn't believe it. You know, and sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, I get that call, and I have been traumatized now with this situation, trying to, you know, she says, I'm in the car now, I'm sleeping in the car tonight. Tomorrow, I'm getting the guys to come, and I'm going into Port of Spain, and I'm staying there in a hotel. I am not making this stuff up.
Yeah, no, I remember there was a time I came home, and as I was driving into my yard, I saw a snake curled up and between some bricks at the side, and I don't even think I can remember how it looked. I didn't watch it for too long. I just knew it was a snake, and I remember calling my brother, like, if he could do anything. And I'm like, there's a snake in the yard. Please come and kill it. I told him to kill it. And he was like,
the problem.
Yeah, he said, no,
the
why
first
am I
thing
going
is
to kill that?
No. How many murders for the year? Let's be hovering around 100. How much by snake? None. So, logically, we should go about, and anybody who possibly looks like they could be a murderer or inflict any injury on you, we should take preemptive action and kill them. Right? Where would that put us? Right? In a brutal state of barbarism and utter stupidity. But it's okay now to exact that on the animals. You know, and I keep saying, no, it's not. No, it doesn't make any sense. Okay? Show me the killer, and we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay? 99% of the time, the animal never comes in your house to kill you. It may end up in your house and you say, oh, we was here first. Well, actually, no. You know, and you should understand, because where you were was what? Bush not too long ago. All right? So you have an understanding there that if we displace them, there's a time when they're going to kind of come back. And a lot of times they're not looking for you. They're probably coming back into villages and territories because there are rats. There is food. Or sometimes because of the bushfire that Trinis has stupidly just, it's like a war with these bushfires, the animals are fleeing for their lives.
Yes.
And if you're not burning your house, then well, okay, we'll go to that place. That's not burning. So there's a lot of sense to be had and understood and to be digested. But at the bottom of it all is live and let live. Okay? And worse, so, you know, I'm targeting Tobagonians now because, gosh, it have nobody I've met in the entire world thus far. And I've met people from all over the world, really. Nobody, I think, more afraid of a snake culturally and socially, communally than Tobagonians. Okay? I know. I grew up in that. And it's actually because of that fear all around me and this talk about snake why I was drawn to them. I'm like, no, something not right here. And I did something amazing. I read. You know, and the more I read is the more fascinated I was by these creatures. And like, it have, first of all, no dangerous snakes in Tobago. None.
Right.
Okay? So you could go in the forest, you know, buck naked anytime, get bitten by a snake, and walk out fine. None.
I think it's just a stigma when somebody sees a snake, you automatically think, your fear radar just goes up and you automatically think like, this thing is venomous, this thing is going to kill me, or this snake is, you know, and that's just what we, in the culture that we know or we learn or we, about snakes, you know, from the time I see a snake, I think venom. I think 2 teeth, and that's just what you think of snakes. If I saw this in my yard, I might faint. I don't know, but I'm not gonna think that it's not venomous. And let me just leave it. We can coexist.
Only not venomous, they don't want any part of you.
Yeah, and we could understand the same thing with insects. People say, you know, like, that little bug is more afraid of you than you are of it. Same thing with fish. When you go to sea, they say, no, the fish is more afraid of you than you are of it. No. No. The
exception is mosquito. Yeah, they want to bite you. They want to bite you. They have to. That is what they're programmed for.
Yeah.
And they're way more deadly than snakes. But yet still you walk around people's home and they have the fancy plants with a big saucer full of water.
No, once you see a mosquito,
you know,
that's your reaction.
Yeah, you kill the mosquito that is biting you or buzzing in your ear, but you would not do due diligence around your home to remove standing water, standing and stagnant water. That's usually where they come from. So if people do that collectively in a community, you get rid of the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Less biting, less problems. Okay? I got dengue a while ago and it was horrid. But I mean, it just was a day, but for that one day, it was bad. It was bad.
Mr. Reed, well, we do have to wrap up.
Wrap up? Oh, we love wrap up. Snakes love that term. Constrictors love that term, wrap up. Because that is what we do. We wrap up our prey. And because I'm moving and she's like, okay, I'm moving this way, you're holding me this way. She's held on really tight below here in this thing here. Come on, Kayla, we got to go. We've got to wrap up. Oh, we got to wrap up, Kayla. There we go. Nice, there we go. There you go.
I don't think she probably doesn't like my perfume.
Yeah. There we go.
I don't want to grab her.
Right,
you want to come by me?
There you go.
Okay.
All right. Nice.
All right. Well, as per usual, before we close, I will leave you with this. In a world full of noise, be the voice that brings clarity, hope, and truth.
I like that.
Yes.
Full of noise. All the noise about the negativities of our wildlife. Be the voice. So now you have been instructed and you've learned you can be the voice of truth and positivity towards our wildlife and towards our country.
I'll try my best. I'll try my best. So Jada's not here, but as she says, you know, do ensure to leave a comment on our live streams and, you know, let us know if there's any topics that you're interested in that you'd like us to discuss, that you'd like us to highlight. If you have anything to say at all about our program, share with us and we will discuss it on the show the following day when we do see it. So with that, I leave you, stay safe, do enjoy the rest of your day, stay inspired, and we'll see you back again here tomorrow morning. Thank you, bye-bye.
WESN.
John, we are in an election season. This is a period of no ifs, buts, and whens, and whys, and wheres, but what matters most. I know you came into this party on the sponsorship of Maurice Marshall. I know you are a person whose family has the deepest of roots in the heart of East Port of Spain. Tell me, are you still a member of the PNM?
I am not. I resigned from the PNM in May of 2024. I never got a response to that letter, but I resigned from the PNM in May of 2024.
And I take it that resignation was seriously considered before you walked away.
It was.
What caused that? What caused you, Mr. PNM John Jeremy, to put two wheels on your heels and bolt it from Balizé House 1 and 2?
Mr. Leasing, I was never John PNM Jeremy. I joined the PNM when Maurice Marshall, back in the day when I was a student.
But I can tell you I was Louis PNM Leasing.
Okay, well, we are different.
All right, yeah.
But I had my identity of my own.
Yes.
But what attracted me to the PNM was its vision and some of the words of Eric Williams. I read a lot, especially as a university student. And Eric Williams said at a special convention of the PNM, he said some words that struck me as a young man. He said that he gave purpose to the PNM. He said, listen, bring together all the races. That for him was important. Bring together all the races. Add dignity to classes which had none. And lift up colors that were traditionally despised colors. I might have gotten the words wrong, but that is the sense of what he said. And those words found an echo in me. Now, I found over the past 10 years that the PNM had abandoned that philosophy entirely. Now, that was made public when the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, went on national TV and said those words. A friend of mine, a colleague who sat in the cabinet, drew the interview to my attention. I sat in horror, and the following day, instead of the Prime Minister withdrawing the words or saying, listen, I misspoke, as all of us do from time to time, he doubled down on the words. And those words were to the effect, directly opposite. They were to the effect that there's nothing wrong with getting the rich richer. You get the rich richer, and you know what? The poor might benefit or would benefit from the rich getting richer. That is
so before the poor could get richer, the rich to get richer.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now, that as a philosophy, as an economic philosophy, as a social philosophy, as a political philosophy, I reject.
Now,
it is the worst form of what I describe to be Thatcherism.
So do I hear you say your parting with the PNM has much to do with the fact that because you believe the people for whom the PNM has its largest membership has been abandoned?
Yes.
Okay.
That is it. I think that we have betrayed our base.
So the issue of race is a fundamental issue in the context of Trinidad and Tobago's politics.
Well, it ought not to be, in the sense that persons ought not to vote on the basis of race.
But if you would stick a pin, race has always been an issue with our politics. What do you say to the voters who want to vote and are not comfortable at all with the PNM for the very reasons that you have enunciated?
Well, I will say to my brothers and sisters that we are at a crossroads now. Members of the international community are, with the best way that I can put the visa restriction that has been placed on us by the United Kingdom for the first time, and some of the soundings from our traditional partners, is to say that they have serious reservations about us as a people and as a civilization. I myself feel that the country is at a crossroads, a juncture, that this is a critical time in our history. I believe that the decision that we make now is going to determine our future. It is going to determine the kind of Trinidad that we leave to our children. That is the only reason that I am with you today. I have never, ever, in my 10 years in public life, I have never done an interview like this, despite injunctions from the deceased Prime Minister, Patrick Manning. I have never gone on a national platform. I think once he had me stand in Komuto and say a few words, which I confess I would have stolen from the President of the Republic now. But this is not me. My arena of comfort is Parliament, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and in my office, at the Office of the Attorney General. That is where the former Prime Minister thought that I had acquitted myself well enough to be deserving of a recall. I've never done this before. I'm doing it now because I think that we have to make a change in terms of the leadership and direction of this country. If this country continues as is, I believe in my heart that we are doomed as a civilization.
So you've thrown race out the window?
I have.
And you're saying to the people at this time, don't vote for the party that I identified with before. I recommend to you to vote UNC.
Well,
but more than that, you're saying to them, listen, to all those people who believe that the UNC isn't good, I want to say to you that as I have examined certainly the last UNC administration, I saw the UNC was able to attract a cadre of strong and committed professionals, people the likes of Larry Hawaii and Sandy and you name it. So are you saying that?
I am saying that in the last UNC administration, you had a concerted attempt to treat with criminal activity. We did a reasonable job with respect to kidnapping for ransom. Before we had the opportunity to really treat with gang-related homicides, there was an election, and we know what has happened to gang-related homicides since then. But we made a good faith attempt to treat with kidnapping for ransom. People were being kidnapped twice a week. There was an industry. We put a stop to that. The UNC had a proper grasp of the management of the economy. There was Mr. Dukaran, there was Mr. Hawaii, neither of whom persons could fault in terms of their performance. They weren't put there by accident. They were put there by their leader. A prime minister put them there. Now, our stewardship of the economy over the past 10 years has led to increasing unemployment, a decimation of the middle classes in this country, and the increasing wealth of a small cadre of persons precisely consistent with the view expressed by the former Prime Minister that the purpose of government is to get the rich richer and to see if the poor can benefit from that. What has not happened and will not happen, because that is a flawed and discredited model of development, is that the poor have not benefited.
So, Mr. Jeremy, if the PNM cannot do the job, who will govern?
In our system, we have a system, party politics. There are two major parties. The PNM is now unfit for governance. The opposition party is not unfit for governance. It is ready to govern. There is in place a leader there who has carried this country forward for a considerable period of time, during which the country reaped economic benefits, persons were better off, the middle classes were better off than they are today. For me, it's a no-brainer. I will be supporting the opposition party in the coming election, and I will encourage my relatives, my friends, to put aside the old dividers of race. That is a relic of colonialism, and I will encourage my brothers and sisters to vote for the opposition party, the United National Congress.
Now, you know, John, in politics, the party is one thing, but the leader is always the focal point. As we assess the leadership of both parties, who, in your opinion, brings more stocks to the job of Prime Minister?
Well, I would reframe the question with respect. You have a choice between a leader that is untested at a time when the country is in dire straits and in need of experienced leadership. That is on the one side, the PNM side. No one can say that the PNM leader now has been tested. He's a very young man, and he is untested. The other option is a woman who has led a party, who has actually governed a country for a term, and not without some difficulties and not without fault, but she has governed the country for a term. The country has done better economically. Individuals in the country have done better economically. This disparity that now exists between the ultra-rich and the rest of us, but that disparity did not exist under the UNC. And I dare say that when this salary increase for politicians was raised under the UNC, because it was raised under the UNC, they refused to accept the increase in salary. You have now a group of persons who are sitting down on salaries. I think in the case of the Prime Minister, it's $1 million a year. And at the same time, you are asking public servants and hardworking police officers, members of the protective services who have to go out there and they have to deliver services for us in health, in the national security services. You're asking them to take a 4% salary increase. And that to me is obscene. And that alone, on that basis alone, I think that persons who have been so shabbily treated, that is the rest of the society, that they should reject those who think that they are better than us. So they are not like us.
Folks, I think this sums it up. This gives a good and appropriate response to the question, are you better off than you were 10 years ago? But more importantly, it responds to the question about the party's abandonment of a large core of its base. I think, I don't want to say I think, I know that the party that now governs has proven itself incapable of administering. And therefore, we know that we need to stop doing the same thing over and over. And if we need to stop doing the same thing over and over, we need to look elsewhere. I think Mr. Jeremy has given us the appropriate answers.
Thank you.
I thank you all.
Thank you for having me.
WESN.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Here is our WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Pandey urges voters to reject PNM and UNC. New Tobago Tourism President elected. Family of missing rig workers still waiting for closure. Prime Minister promises tech overhaul for public services. And internationally, Trump freezes $2.2 billion in Harvard funding after pushback. Now for the details. Patriotic Front leader Michaela Pandey says both the PNM and UNC have failed the people. Speaking at a public meeting in Laramine, Pandey claimed both parties rob citizens of dignity and hope, especially the youth. She pointed to issues in Couva North, including poor infrastructure, lack of water, and neglect, saying it would have broken her father's heart. She also condemned online attacks against Patriotic Front candidates and insisted the party is running a clean, youth-driven campaign. The Patriotic Front has promised initiatives focusing on safety, prosperity, and food security. Reginald McLean is the new president of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association. McLean, who manages Blue Waters Inn and Speyside, was elected during the THTA's AGM on April 8th. The new board plans to focus on tourism funding, airlift development, and foreign investment reform. They're also pushing for part of the room tax collected from hotels to go toward destination marketing. The board says the sector needs urgent support to overcome ongoing challenges. The family of offshore worker Pete Phillip is still waiting for closure almost 4 months after he vanished at sea. Phillip went missing after a rig collapsed on December 22nd. Though his body was located, it has not yet been recovered. His brother Elvis says the emotional toll has been devastating, especially on their mother. Pete's widow recently gave birth to their 5th child, and 2 sons just sat their SEA exams. The family is demanding accountability and action from Well Services and the Energy Ministry. Prime Minister Stuart Young says the PNM's manifesto will be launched within 24 hours. Speaking at a political meeting in Lahokita, he promised faster tech-driven public services, including digital pension processing and grant applications. Young also said the government is being transparent with public servants about salary offers. Youth Minister Foster Cummings added that $200 million has been approved for a new secondary school in Lahokita and warned against voter suppression tactics online. Internationally, President Donald Trump has frozen over $2 billion in federal funding to Harvard after the university rejected new government demands. The White House had called for major changes to address anti-Semitism, including hiring oversight and reporting students deemed hostile to American values. Harvard pushed back, citing free speech and academic freedom. The administration called Harvard's response entitled and said elite schools must be held accountable. Other universities like Columbia have already accepted similar demands to avoid losing funding. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
WESN.
Some people would say yellow is the code. Other people would say red is the word. But I think differently. For every creed and race, for all political affiliations to find an equal place, we have to look beyond the colors. Don't miss our election coverage, April the 29th, starting from 7:30 p.m., where we will give you what might be, relatively speaking, one of the more, if not the most objective panels that you will see that night. Trying to hit the issues as opposed to riling up the emotions of our differences, whether it is racial differences, or the differences between red and yellow and blue and green. Differences which are used in many ways to keep us fractured. Now, not in some grand conspiracy way where there are backroom deals and handshakes, and this is what we're going to do to split the population. But rather, differences as a means to try to carve out one's political foundation of support at the cost or the expense of national unity, at the cost or the expense of constructive dialogue, at the cost or the expense of constructive ways moving forward, finding solutions to problems rather than just complaining about them. One of the things is with regards to the state of emergency. Now, yesterday, I said it would have been better, in my opinion, if the government didn't try to say it was a success, because there were aspects about it which you couldn't necessarily say it was a total success. But the reverse is also true, because I didn't say that it was a total failure. I said there were things that the government could have said, right, depending on how transparent they wanted to be, that they could have said that would have been certain positive aspects from the state of emergency. And one of the things that we identified was the fact that, look, at the end of the day, the murder rate was suppressed and the level of violence was also suppressed. There were less stories about automatic rifle fire being sprayed into crowds and mass casualty events. Yes, there were still, in some cases, multiple victims, so therefore they could be classified as mass casualties, but it was with pistols, now with rifles. The threat level was not quite the same, and the number of murders was also reduced. Now, to say that the SOE was a success, I would have said that would have needed to have been a bit more concrete and long-lasting once the SOE is over. I don't necessarily have expectations that will be the case, as much as the TTPS is trying to say, you know, we've gotten more intelligence, we're going to move forward with the things that we've gained. All right, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not going to say that it can't happen. I'm just saying that I'm not going to assume that it will happen. But I just said there was some degree of success with the murder rate. Some degree of success. It was, even if temporarily, it was suppressed for the 3 months, well, a little over 3 months that the SOE was in place. And that meant that potentially 50 people would have died if we stuck to our averages, and I'm sure the opposition will not say no, we just didn't magically have a lower murder rate for some other reason, because that would imply that the government is actually dealing with crime effectively for the last 3 months. If it's not the SOE, if it's for some other factor, that would say, hey, they were actually doing something right, as opposed to the SOE was just suppressing the violence. But the point is it did. So we can at least appreciate that. So when the opposition candidate for Orapuch East, Dr. Rural Mulilal, comes out and said it was a complete failure and it did nothing to make you feel safer, well, the unfortunate reality, and this could be one of those instances where, you know, there's the truth, then there's lies, then there's darn lies, paraphrasing, and then there's statistics. Statistically, we were safer. We were safer in the SOE. You were less likely, technically, to be killed in the SOE, both in terms of the actual number of murders, so by the percentages you were less likely to die, as well as the fact that you were less likely to be collateral damage. Because the spray and pray situation wasn't quite what it was. So to some extent, I would argue, yeah, they did just enough to make me technically feel safer. So to say that we weren't safer, maybe some people legitimately didn't feel safer, and that's fine, that's fair, that's valid, because it's how you feel. And to some extent, you know, look, just because we have an SOE, that doesn't mean crime stopped. I could still be the victim of crime. I'm still concerned about, you know, when I come home to my house, whether it's in the middle of the night or in some cases in the middle of the day. I'm still concerned about when I have to, maybe I have to withdraw cash because of some archaic government office that still needs cash, or because that's how I run my business and I'm taking a risk. There are a lot of instances where you might not have felt safe, but technically speaking, on an objective, not a subjective measure, on an objective measure, at least with regards to the murder rate, we were a little bit safer. Also, I think 4,000 plus assorted rounds taken off the street, at least in the past, that would have been a big deal. It seems like ammunition is a bit more readily available and not as expensive and scarce as it used to be. But that may ironically have impacted the level of violence more than the guns confiscated, which arguably was not enough based on intelligence estimates from the government themselves, the current sitting government. But back to the point. This is one of those things, again, where you want to make absolute statements because it sounds strong, because it sounds like you have confidence in the statement, because it drives a message. But the problem is, technically speaking, the data does not back up that message. I'm not saying that it's wrong to say that the SOE was not as effective probably as what we would have liked, but the other part is, and what makes this in the long term even less effective is, to what extent was this SOE less effective than the SOE under the partnership? Now, we might see a lot of parallels with regards to the eventual lawsuits, depending, but again, we'll have to see what plays out there. Maybe there will be lawsuits, maybe the TTPS learned a thing or two of what to avoid. You know, maybe some of those lawsuits were based off of trivial technicalities, and it was just a matter of cleaning up certain procedural things, not necessarily the fault of the strategy. Who knows, right? We have to see how the current situation turns out with regards to the people who may seek to have lawsuits because of detention orders or unlawful detention, possibly, depending on how the courts, you know, allows them or humors them, etc. But at the end of the day, we can't just look at that SOE from the partnership and say, oh, that is the objective standard for SOE success. So that and all kind of makes the opposition saying, this was a failure. Well, you all didn't really do that much better, number one. But number two, by trying to be absolute, the problem is you open yourself up to essentially be called out for being wrong, not because you're wrong in a major way, but because you're wrong in a minor way. And this happens to the government all the time. And it frustrates me to no end, right? COVID was a global exercise of trying to speak in absolute terms a complex situation that had a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving variables, and that needed to be communicated with a lot more care, but rather it was done in an extremely clumsy manner, and it led to a large portion of the world's population from distrusting the authorities. And to some extent, that's their fault. And that goes all the way up to in some aspects of the WHO's communication, whoever still believes in Dr. Fauci. And unfortunately, because we followed the lead, because to some extent this was something that not a lot of people had experience in, our own government at times. And the UNC also does it to themselves. Because our politicians think they have to speak in absolutes. They leave no room for details, for granularity, for variability. They leave no room for analysis of the details on a case-by-case basis on their own merits. They want to have blanket statements. And when you do that, it's no wonder that neither side really puts in that much effort when it comes to trying to compromise in order to work together in order to do the people's business in Parliament. Because there were certain aspects of legislation that really and truly we needed the opposition and the government to come together to improve the legislation of various aspects, to strengthen them, to have proper measures in place, things like the gambling bill and certain aspects of crime. And there are a lot of people who are pointing out things like campaign finance reform and constitutional reform. You're going to need both sides of the House, generally speaking, unless somebody gets a 33-3. And it's no wonder we don't have that. Because when both sides speak in absolutes, they leave no room to negotiate. Because they just told their supporters, hey, the worst things, absolute, no, you know, there's no saving grace on the other side. None whatsoever. So then how do we compromise with them and work with them if they're the most wicked, vile, evil? If they're the most corrupt? How do you then work together? Notice that there are times when you don't necessarily hear the level of rhetoric, and we won't necessarily have time to get into more of it later on, but throughout the week we will, because it's one of those things with this election. We don't necessarily always hear the level of rhetoric abroad that we do domestically. The key difference is we might hear it abroad sometimes, but domestically we hear it consistently. That's the baseline that we can't get off from. So of course, who's going to come together? So then now, when it comes for the better of the nation, for the sake of the country, for the sake of unity, all of those phrases said by most parliamentarians or former parliamentarians currently, because they have to be re-elected and reappointed, most parliamentarians that said that, I have to take it with a grain of salt. And that's where we end up. A simple observation with regards to an absolute statement on one aspect. But I do believe it reveals wider systemic flaws in how our politics operate. Now, the question is, are we, the people, going to continue to tolerate it or not? All right, a couple other things. One, Prakash Ramada, you know, he is technically a political leader of a party, but he's also one of the attorneys representing 3 of the families in the Paria situation. And essentially, he is saying the government missed his deadline to pay the $1 million they promised each of the 5 victims, or the victim, survivor, and the 4 families. Now, I don't necessarily care much for his deadline, but the underlying foundation of his argument is, well, the government didn't set a timetable. So now, as much as one attorney's deadline doesn't necessarily count, he does highlight the fact that what if this is just a campaign promise that is never delivered? And I have reasons to think that might happen. I'll let you come up with your own reasons. I won't go into it. Just want to point that out. What if they just said we're going to give $1 million, but, you know, there's more important things to do than try to rectify a situation where 4 men died, in part due to the inability of one state entity. I'm basing that statement on the Commission of Inquiry report. So I'll just leave that there. I hope that's not the case, but I'll just leave that there. The UNC raised a red flag about special voting process in San Fernando East. The chief election officer, she rejected the accusation, or at least parts of it. But there was one aspect that she would consider, and that is with regards to, it's not necessarily ballots were tainted, but that the issue about the sealing the box and the process, where now she has to check with her people. She's not just going to take the accounts of one person from the UNC, because according to them, there was no UNC representation, while the chief elections officer, I believe she has information that no, they didn't contact the constituency, they contacted the party, national party level on a whole, and they got representatives in Port of Spain and San Fernando. But the sealing the box matter, she's still going to look into it further. So the chief elections officer hasn't necessarily declared anything on that, whether it's she's rejecting the accusations or not. My issue is, unfortunately, the UNC has brought up EBC, whatever, for so long that there's a part of me that just, it's hard to be concerned about this issue as much as it probably should be, since they've technically cried wolf too many times. So now you've desensitized at least some of us to this sort of accusation, because it looks like just another, oh, well, we just throw in things out there. We don't actually have anything substantial, because if you had evidence, then it won't just be accusations, right? And that's why you don't just throw every accusation out there that you can't prove, because your credibility erodes over time. But it is what it is. Judiciary has just sent a notice, and I'll mention it here. Beware of fake traffic ticket scam. People are receiving messages, right, and a URL link that's essentially judiciary saying it's a fake link, right? So this is one of those things where, well, first of all, they pointed out, court transactions can only be made through the court pay portal at courtpay.ttlawcourts.org. And I think that's one of the key things there. Usually .org might be a government body, right? When in doubt, double check things. Don't be afraid to engage with the authorities, right? Of course, there will always be people that are trying to pull a smart one, and they might also get caught up in the scam. But the point is, judiciary is warning people, listen, I guess fraud is the new trendy crime. Lastly, there's a new special needs center for children opened in Chaguanas. Not necessarily a lot of details with regards to what will be offered in the report, but it's one of those things where I am very grateful for it. To some extent, it's a lot of private donations. I don't know if government was involved, but it seems like a private initiative. And hopefully we could see more things like this, because unfortunately, too many children, their needs are falling through the cracks. I know it's one of those things where it's like all of a sudden everybody has autism. There's so much autism and special needs diagnosis is much more than they were in the past. But think about it. In the past, what would you say? Well, the child is just slow, and you'll just kind of leave them to their devices, have no expectations for them. In some cases, yes, they might not necessarily be able to independently live as an adult, but in other cases, they may have been. But if we just kind of push them off to the side and assume, well, they're just slow, they won't necessarily have a good chance to get anywhere. So what are we gonna do? In issues like this, the mindset needs to be expanded, because it's not just about kids with special needs. It's also about, and it's not just about kids with learning disabilities, who I don't know if they will all classify as special needs. But it's also about the fact that we have a one-size-fits-all system in our education and childhood development system. Nationally, it's one size fits all. That's one of the reasons why special needs kids doesn't work for them, right? It doesn't work for all students with what you would call the normal range, because not every child will learn the same way. And that is hopefully to some extent, the philosophy of trying to meet the needs of the individual child. I know, yes, it might sound like it's going to be more expensive, but to some extent, potentially, I would argue that our education system is overcompensating for its own deficiencies. And it'll take a lot of effort, and it might take some time where we could solve it. Meanwhile, kudos to these private initiatives for trying to pick up the slack. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome the good lady herself. Stay tuned. This is Talking About on WSN. We'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lips?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break a balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug.
You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man is being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
I'm back here on talking about the WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small alongside the good lady herself, Karen Nishishera. I'm sure one of our callers will call in to finish her introduction. But in the meantime, you know, there's a lot to talk about. Of course, there's an election going on. But one of the things with the election I find interesting, and it's not limited to this issue, but many technical issues, they're kind of being oversimplified and in some cases kind of pushed aside and conveniently forgotten. And it's not necessarily part of the debate. While both parties are saying what free goodies they could give you, yes, both parties, not just the PNM, at the end of the day, actual analysis of our economic and energy sector situation, maybe, you know, it's not necessarily as good as it should be because we need to find out who might have the best ideas to deal with the challenges up ahead. One of the things that I lament is the fact that, you know, we still, I mean, the debate is centered on the fact of who's celebrating Dragon to be dead and who is understanding that, look, it's not about celebrating that it's dead, it's that it's unfortunate that it didn't work out, but we do have to ask the question, why did the government seemingly, despite what they say, kind of put so much focus on this one aspect of our economy? So it's not necessarily all bad news, however, and the good lady is here to speak about that. Karen Nishishera, good morning. Welcome back.
Thank you, Sean. Yes, that was quite an introduction. So I think we know that Trinidad depends on its energy sector as its main revenue earner. When we have booms and busts in our economy, it's a result of the price of oil and now more in the last 20 years or so, the price of natural gas. So what I said I would speak today on, and it's going to be whoever wins the election. I'm not getting into the party politics, but I'm saying whoever wins the election is certainly going to have to deal with this as we go forward. And so I looked at what would we talk about today in terms of the energy sector. And I said it's really a case of double jeopardy or a double whammy for the energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And as Sean did say, we will look at what I consider some pragmatic and also some of the initiatives that the government is already taking, this current government, I should say, and what we can look forward to, hopefully, as we move forward. I'm not saying I'm an energy expert, but some of the things I don't think you need to be one to at least have an opinion about whether go with our energy sector as we move forward into the next administration, whoever that may be. So let's start with some good news, at least good news for us, for Trinidad and Tobago, and that is BP, Shell, and Exxon signal one thing. That's an article on oil price. This is a very popular site. One thing, oil isn't going anywhere. So I'll just read the first two paragraphs. Ever since BP admitted that its attempt to go green had ended in disaster, the flow of news from the energy industry has been in one single direction, back to oil and gas, which make money. Indeed, big oil has finally accepted it will not transform into big green power and has gone back to what it does best, hydrocarbons. And the evidence of that is, for example, with BP, they had lost a significant amount of their share price, so did Shell, but not as much as BP. And BP decided to rewind or repivot into spending more on oil and gas production, as much as 10 billion, and actually reduce its spend on renewable energies by as much as 5 billion. That has met a lot of, you know, there's been what they call the Extinction Rebellion is getting pushed back, definitely. And I think they're having their AGM on April the 18th, so it's going to happen soon. But the point is that most of them, Shell, had a big, huge project in Brazil, which was renewable energy, and it has shuttled that. And you see that BP, and we are one of the countries in which BP has signaled they have 10 global natural gas gas fields that they are focusing on. This is making international news. It's not just local news. And we've talked about it, I think, Ginger. The Ginger gas field is one of 10 of the global initiatives of BP to focus back on natural gas. So, I mean, that is really good news for Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, I just want to, the reason why BP and Shell moving back to fossil fuels from green energy, why that's good news for us, it seems as though they were positioning themselves to kind of exit our oil and gas sector. And then we could have been left with maybe some smaller players that didn't have the economies of scale.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the thing is, it's not that we don't have gas, it's that is it profitable to get the gas that we still have? But now that they're staying, you know, and the prices, at least for gas, the more it goes up, the more viable our reserves, what we have left, is profitable.
Exactly. And in fact, there's not speculation to say that BP couldn't pick up his Georgie bundle and go. Because when I was preparing for this show, I got 2 articles that were very excellent. One from UE and another one. In any event, what they said, they were going through the history of energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And what they said, that BP had already done that in the 1970s when it no longer became profitable for oil, because that would be oil. You know, the late 1970s or early 80s, you know, the downslide happened. And they did pack up their bags and sell out all their assets. So it's not something you're just speculating about. But as I said, it's good news, and unfortunately, this is what takes the world go around, money, 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 and that's what's happening. So having said that, where also you see evidence of that, as I said, with Shell. But for us in Trinidad and Tobago, the double jeopardy that I spoke about is price volatility, which is always with us, you know, and it's even more so in the geopolitical tensions we're experiencing, and more lately, Trump's secondary tariff on any country, apart from the whatever tariff he has now paused on for the next 90 days, started a few days ago. A 25% secondary tariff on any country dealing with Venezuela in oil and gas. And that is our problem, because the price volatility really reaches, I mean, right now, natural gas is trading very well. And so there might be a surplus this year, I'm not sure, because natural gas was budgeted at $3, and it has been trading over $3.50 for about the last few weeks, definitely. And it doesn't
wasn't
seem
it higher in the past?
It was $4, and a little bit over $4, but it's still staying high. So that's good news for us, because we are really a natural gas economy. So that's the volatility. It's good for us in natural gas. And then we have the production issue, price and production. We have a shortfall of at least 1.4 billion, I think, cubic feet of gas per day. So that is we have a double jeopardy, as I said. So as I was saying, the good news is they're pivoting back. The other good news, even though they have put on hold completely the huge solar farm, I think it was Shell. Shell has done that with Brazil, put that on hold. For us, we have a solar farm in Brecon Castle and another location, which used to be another sugar area, Orange Grove, or Orange Grove, I think it's Orange Grove. And that's far advanced. It's supposed to come on stream by about the middle of this year. And what's good about that? The purpose of doing yes, Orange Grove. The purpose of that is that the first call on our natural gas is electricity to TNTech. But if you can provide TNTech with electricity through the solar farm, which they have been developing in both of those locations, then they can reallocate the natural gas to the LNG sector, because of course Shell, BP and NGC are the companies that have invested in this solar farm. So for us, because we have a shortfall in production of natural gas, they're not putting brakes on that, and it's nearly completed as far as I understand at this point. And that means they can free up more natural gas. And the other thing that allows the freeing up of natural gas for us again is the fact that it's not good news in one sense, definitely not. But this is the volatility of gas and oil. And Nikwan, you know, Nikwan has gone into receivership. They allegedly owe the government over $21 million US in payments. They owe the government for providing them with natural gas. And the government has a 20 to 30% share, a minister's share on every block that the different oil companies developed or gas companies developed. So now that that has been sort of freed up in a sense, unfortunately, for the unfortunate reasons, that gives more opportunity for LNG supply and to deal with the production issue. And of course, the next thing we have is the refinery startup. That again is good news because in a way having low prices on oil is in a sense profitable to us because we are really a natural gas economy, but also the oil prices have been trading below the $70, I think, that we had anticipated. It's been trading at $60, $62, $65, but definitely has had been a slump for a number of reasons: geopolitical tensions, OPEC plus bringing more oil on the market. But for us, in a sense, it's good news because we don't produce much oil. Those days of a huge oil production are gone. We're getting something like 57,000 barrels per day if we're lucky. We're down to below that. But where we can make the money is in refining. And the lower the price of the oil, the better for the refinery because the margin of profit is going to be higher. And we import most of our oil. We have been doing that for years. For years, I know some people think that we refine just our oil. No, we don't produce enough, but we can refine oil: aviation, diesel, gasoline, super, bitumen for our road paving, all of those things. And the thing about it is it also affects the fuel subsidy. The lower the price of oil, the smaller or the less is the fuel subsidy that the government still gives to certain types of oil on the market. So with the refinery supposedly coming on stream, that is good news for us because it means that the Paria, which has been importing hundreds of millions of dollars of fuel, all different types of fuel, there was one report, I think, for 3 months they had imported US $340 million worth, and that affects the foreign exchange reserves, even though, of course, some of that fuel is sold to the CARICOM region. Nevertheless, this will be good news because now we will be able to provide the fuel and buy the oil at a much lower price, which we have always been doing for a number of years. We've been doing that. So that's good news for us. However, I think they need to put a pause on that Oando because Oando has been taken off the Johannesburg and another stock exchange.
It's not in New York?
Maybe they did, but I know I read Johannesburg and 2 of them in South Africa. And then that whole fuel oil subsidy fraud case in 2011 to 2016 does not spell good news. And there was a report in one of the daily papers about the auditing lacking. And that, I think, is why they were taken off the stock exchange, not filing the audited accounts. So I don't think we want to do business with Oando on the face of it, and they should give a pause on it and pass the procurement regulations and let the procurement regulator deal with the bidding for a lease or a sale, if that's it, of the refinery. Let's start from there. So that's good news. I've given some very good news. So now that we have looked at that, what about the Dragon Field? I have said it for over a year. And I was just talking about it with Sean before we came on. I mean, every indication was that it was not a good deal. All of Dragon Field is in Venezuelan waters. America is the one, not the U.S., not the Venezuelan 30-year lease, which is cause for concern because if the 30-year lease is still ongoing, it means are we paying every year or however we have staggered the payments, even though United States has pulled the plug, but they were pulling the plug. Biden would only give us 2 years. I've said it so many times. 31st of October, that was D-Day. Shell would not make a final investment decision for Dragon Field. And then now we heard the other one, the cross-border, Coquina Mannequin. They had given them permission under Biden to develop that until 2026. Now they pulled the plug on that. The only thing that has survived is the Lauren Manatee because that was delinked from Venezuela. Venezuela is the issue because America makes it an issue for us. That is their sanctioned strategy, and it's not something that you found out about yesterday. I mean, I don't understand. I really don't understand that strategy, to be very honest. This has been ongoing for almost about 10 years. The dragon cannot dance. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. And it's getting worse now with Trump, which we didn't know who was going to win that the elections in the United States, with putting on now a secondary sanction. And one thing business does not like is uncertainty. Oil and gas already has built in so much uncertainty. Now you add another layer to it with Trump's secondary tariffs, trying to, make America great again. So the point about all of that is I think we need to leave the dragon field alone. If Coquina Mannequin is going to survive, we need to do what we did with Lauren Manatee and de-link it from the Coquina, I think that's on the Venezuelan side, as they did with Lauren Manatee, so we could develop. Shell did make a final investment decision with Manatee when it was de-linked from Lauren. Now, Lauren has more gas, 7.2 trillion cubic feet of gas, whereas our side has 2-point-something trillion. But the fact is it was de-linked, so they were able now to develop separately the Manatee side and give a final investment decision. They would never give one on Dragon, because all of Dragon is in Venezuelan waters. Shell has they have investors, they are not going to sit down with that level of uncertainty coming from the United States, coming from Venezuela, coming from Maduro. You could not take that chance. I never understood it. So it's never about against Dragonfield, it's about it did not make practice in the position that we are in Trinidad, with production issues, price volatility. It was not making sense to pursue that the way that it was being pursued. It could not make sense. So the position now is, I suppose, BP did make a final investment decision with Coquina Mannequin, and they can, even though America has given revoked the license to develop the cross-border fields, they can do like Shell with Lauren Manatee and develop the side in Trinidad and not need to get U.S. OFAC license for that purpose. And leave Dragonfield alone, at least for now, although I don't know what these payments are like. So that's the position.
Well,
so the good news.
The irony is, I would hope that the payments to the Venezuelan government end, not just because I think it's throwing good money after bad, but because also I'm pretty sure that's not going to help diplomatic negotiations with America when they say, why are you giving Venezuela a billion?
MOU, and America didn't.
Sanctions.
America allow, yes, but America put a sanction on OFAC. Are you dealing with them? But if you have a lease agreement, I mean, I understand what you're saying, because I'm sure the U.S. is in U.S. dollars.
Right, the point of the sanctions is to prevent Venezuela from getting cash. So this is one of those things where...
What are we going to do, though?
I mean, listen,
there you go.
Listen, a lot of countries around the world are basically defaulted on Belt and Road. We could probably say, hey, they have sanctions. It's not our fault. And I don't think any international court is going to say, no, you're always supposed to pay the $1 billion US. I'm just saying, I think it's going to be a waste if we already paid it for the year. I mean, all right, fine, but hopefully we don't pay it next year.
But that's why we should never have gone there, you see.
There you go.
All the signs were there. It's not about being negative, because the good news...
I think one of the things that you're not mentioning, but it's also adding to the negativity. So there's the American government situation and their policy, right? And even the more lenient side, it didn't look like a guarantee, right? Even if the Democrats won. But then there's also the situation with Essequibo and Guyana. And Europe basically said, look, we did a major gas deal with the major military threat to our region. And now, as a member of CARICOM, basically having to negotiate for its own security with foreign help, we are like, oh, we're going to have a deal with the antagonist in this situation and still be a member of CARICOM in good standing who wants to do business with that said CARICOM member. That doesn't necessarily make sense either. And then maybe that's why Guyana is like, Trinidad and Tobago, we could kind of hold off on anything right now.
I think part of the reason is the diplomatic relationship between Trinidad and Ghana, when it first discovered or started exploiting its huge resources of natural gas, was that we were in denial, and I don't think we treated Ghana with the respect that they should have been. One indicator, which, I mean, they backpedaled on it, that is true, but one indicator was when Ghana called national conference, an energy conference, an international conference, I think. Instead of our Prime Minister going to that, he went off to EU to some meeting which couldn't have been more important than that. And as you mentioned, Ghana, that's why I'm telling you natural gas is really, and we're getting some good news for Trinidad in that regard. So I've painted a picture that the big issue is volatility, which is always with us. But the good news on that is that natural gas prices have been trading at higher prices. And the good news for us, if we reopen the refinery, is the lower price of oil, and hopefully it will sustain that price because OPEC plus 10 are pumping a lot of oil into the market, right? So for us, that's good news. So as talking about Guyana, they have already have one pipeline to supply domestic natural gas to the local market. Now they're putting a much bigger pipeline, I mentioned it already, which will supply much more natural gas to Berbice, where they intend to establish a sort of petrochemical industry similar to what we have in Trinidad. But guess what? We have the expertise, we have the knowledge, we need to exploit that relationship with Guyana. We've had people like Dr. Bryan talk about it, Dr. Gonzalez talk about it. I even mentioned sometime, but in passing, that we should start looking to Guyana and Suriname, because the issue now is really more production, and it's going to take time for that production to come on stream, given that Dragonfield is just a non-starter. It's just not it is a non-starter. So at the moment, so what's the good news? Well, the bid rounds, the deep water bid rounds since 2022 was not very successful. And I think part of it is because of the focus of the big giants focusing on renewables, right? So they got only, out of the 17 blocks, only 4 were taken up. So that again now, we're seeing now with this whole move from BP and Shell sort of abandoning renewables because money is at this, and you have shareholders, that's what they want to return on their investment. It's good news for us that this deep water bid round, which I think was announced in January and is closing, I think, in June. There are 26 blocks up for bidding. And I expect they're going to have a much better result than they had with the deep water bid round in 2022.
I mean, we're hoping.
So. Yeah, we're expecting. I mean, just like I'm saying, the Dragonfield wasn't. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see into the future. But people look. I mean, people who go on the stock, which I don't, by the way. But you look and see how the market is performing. What are the signs? You look at that, and you make a best informed decision.
And I think this is one of those cases where, well, just because they didn't have bids in the last round, they didn't have a lot of bids. It doesn't mean that the potential in the land is not there. We don't know. And when they're on their way out, when it looks like they want to move away from fossil fuels, well, then they don't necessarily want to take the risk. But now that they're back into the situation, and they're seeing everything in Guyana, and they're seeing everything in Venezuela, and we're like right there, right?
Exactly.
You could take a flyer, take a shot, and hope to, because we have infrastructure that's ready to go now.
There you go.
And that will save on cost.
And expertise in this area. Fortran days in 1970s, when they had the petrochemical, and then they went to the LNG and started with Patrick Manning and Caput International. They had 3, I was reading the article actually, and the third attempt was Patrick Manning signed the MOU, but of course the change of administration, they didn't bring the gas on stream in Point Fortin until 1999, but this deal was signed in earlier 1995 when that administration was still in force. So I have to give him, some points to that. But what I'm saying about the deep water brown, I think there's much more positivity, but it also speaks of volatility. You will not imagine when you read on oil and especially gas prices, the kind of up and down you'll see, and literally within 2 days, 3 days, you're seeing that kind of volatility. You really have to try and make your best informed decision. So where does that leave us now with this new round that closes in June? I'm thinking that, and I looked it up to see if that was a possibility. And there are smaller producers, smaller operators who provide the petrochemical downstream industries directly with natural gas. And the problem is that with, when I say problem, in the sense that the revenue take is affected by the fact that the major players in our natural gas sector are Shell and BP, and they are focused on LNG. And most of the natural gas, because they make the most investment and take the most risk, most of the natural gas is allocated to the LNG projects. And so it only gives a certain amount that frees up for the petrochemical industry, because that's the NGC is the one that will then allocate whatever percentage to downstream industries. But the good news, as I said, is we do have small investors. I looked it up, Primera, which is a subsidiary of Touchstone, a Canadian firm, directly supplies natural gas to the downstream industry. The other small players, I'm not sure if they are going to bid, but I am suggesting that this is an opportunity to incentivize the small producers or the medium-sized producers like the Perencos and so on, that they then supply the natural gas directly to the downstream industry. Why? Because that's where the government and that's where we make the greatest revenue take. And right now, with all the news about ExxonMobil, Shell, BPTT, pivoting back to hydrocarbons, natural gas being the cleanest of all of them, it's good news for Trinidad and Tobago, but we have to get that production. So, and the final point I want to make is that because we get methanol, urea, and ammonia, which are the main investments in the downstream. And finally, I would want to suggest the passage of transfer pricing legislation. Currently, I know that the minister or the former minister of finance spoke a lot about in billions that we lose, because when you have transfer pricing is when you have a subsidiary selling to another subsidiary or the main player in the organization. Like, I won't call the names of the big companies in Trinidad. They do not sell at a arm's length negotiations or price, but they sell at related party transactions, which means that we lose revenue take in those circumstances. But it's not illegal. So the government, this government, has been promising since the beginning of their first term, to pass the legislation. It hasn't happened as yet, but that's not surprising. I have to say that it really is true. So we are looking to see the transfer pricing legislation passed. We're in a much stronger position than we were before. And we also would like to, I would like to see that if it's possible that we get more of these smaller players supplying downstream with more natural gas, and so that the revenue take is greater. And there has been some adjustment to the unitization of the trains, train 2, 3, and 4, where we, NGC, only had a 10% stake in train 4. That negotiations had been going on for some time, was successful about 2 years ago, I think, might be 1 year or 2 years ago. Right, and they unitized the 2, 3, and 4, and now we have, NGC now has a 10% stake in all the trains. Well, you know, they decommissioned train 1, which, I mean, that was a given. And the good thing about that is because we have a stake in it, in all the trains, we are able to see and monitor the pricing of the natural gas to other, whoever we are selling, BP, Shell, and now NGC is selling that gas to, or are selling the gas to. So that's the good news, but I'll end with this note, and that's the thing. To get the production up is going to take some time. And that's, you know, the issue always is volatility, the volatility of hydrocarbons. It's still going to be with us. We just have to take that as a reality. We went through a peak in the 1973 to 1982, and then a total collapse of prices of oil prices and gas prices, more oil because we're more in the oil market. So between 1983, I'm sure people who were around at that time will remember what we went through during that period of 1983 to 1992 or thereabouts. So, and that hasn't gone away. So that brings me to my last point. So we still are going to be susceptible to these peaks and valleys. We can't get around from the pricing issue. Production issue, I think we can solve it a lot. But again, we have to deal with the issues that are outside of our control. We are not a price maker, we are a price taker in the energy sector. So where does that leave us? We have a lesson learned here. We should have learned it before. Yes, you diversify when you go in the downstream industry and using natural gas to produce methanol, urea, ammonia. Yes, you have diversified in a sense, but we need to really diversify. And I want next week to speak on the issue of diversification and developing other revenue streams, because with all this talk about what you're going to do, what you're going to give away, all these giveaways, you know, look at the situation, the debt profile, the foreign exchange position, our whole, the consistent deficits except for 2022. So what we have to look at is generating more foreign exchange, and the only way to do that, do the SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. That's what we have to do. And in that regard, I will look at the diversification opportunities I believe that are there for Trinidad and Tobago, while we look while we await the production of more natural gas from our own gas fields.
But generally speaking, though, do you think there's hope that we could actually make up the shortfall of production and get us back to the...
In about 2 years.
In about 2 years?
You know why I have that positive thing, positive outlook? Because one, you're not dealing, sorry to say it this way, but you're dealing with the big players. You're dealing with BP and you're dealing with Shell. Once Shell makes and BP makes a final investment decision, barring some extraordinary development, they tend to keep to their schedule, whatever their schedule is.
And it could be as fast as 2 years.
But that's what they anticipate, you know. They were saying that for...
This is for the fields that are coming online.
No, I don't know about the fields coming online. I expect the turnaround might be 2 years or 3 years. So we're going to go through a tough season, that is for sure.
Right.
That is for sure. And we don't have any control over the volatility of energy sector. But we are a natural gas player. We're not ready. We have the refinery. So we have two stakes in the game. You know, so I think there's a positive outlook for Trinidad in regard to the energy sector.
The next question is because you would prefer the refinery to be dealt with by the procurement regulator.
Absolutely, that's what it should be. The section in the Act is Section 58, which was passed in 2016, that they have to pass regulations. So there was a Joint Select Committee meeting earlier this year or last year where that issue was brought up, and they said, when the permanent secretary for the Ministry of Finance, who is responsible as the sole corporation, said that the cabinet did not disapprove the regulations; they just have not been approved as yet.
Right.
So it's to them.
So the reason why I brought that up is now the question is to what extent, how urgent is this? Because on one hand, you want to go through the process properly. You don't want to, allow for any funny business or any mistakes. But on the other hand, if the longer the refinery is just kind of sitting there not doing anything for us, the issues of the economy and the potential benefits, right, that the refinery could kind of help compensate and ease up when energy prices are low in certain respects. We don't have to import bitumen and whatnot. But it can't do anything for us right now, and one of the things that concerns me is when someone said, well, the kind of people that might look to start up the refinery, at least in the past, might be similar to Orlando. They might have skeletons in their closet or questionable, histories that ideally you wouldn't necessarily consider them. However, I think I also read something a little bit more recently that said refineries might be like a premium asset now because it's already built. Yes, they might have to refurbish it, but it's not that they have to build it from the ground up. Now, maybe building from the ground up might not be that difficult, I don't know. But we have an asset that pre-exists, and the real energy production, as old as it is, it might still be beneficial. But right now, it's just kind of there.
Well, let me just respond to what you said. The first thing is, according to the reports, it'll take about $1 billion to bring it back on stream. That's the first thing.
That's TT dollars or US?
TT, I think it's, okay. That's a good question.
That's a big difference.
I think there's a big difference in that. My hope is 1 billion TT. But anyhow, but maybe that's a good, maybe you should look it up.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, but also that's one thing. The second thing is, it's the lack of trust and confidence. When you have the former Prime Minister, when he chose to shut down the refinery, he talked about it being 101 years old, a set of old burnt, all of it. He made it sound like everything there was on the verge of decay, when that was not true. Why Nikwan and all these, although they have not been successful, chose to try the gas to liquid projects was because the infrastructure, and they had done a lot of work. I think Kevin Ramnarayan had spoken about how much work they had done in refurbishing key areas of the refinery. The refinery is made up of 101 acres. Yes, there is part of the refinery that's 101 years old because we've been in the business so many years, which is why we don't have much oil now, right? But the fact of the matter is, it was a wrong perception to give. Now you have to pivot back on your own words and backpedal on your own words. And that is what causes a lot of the problems, the distrust. And it starts with the bidding process. How could you let Orlando be considered when there's so much negative, real data against it? Why are you bringing in a problem into this country, which is already perceived to be corrupt and to have issues? Why would you want to do that? Why don't you let the regulator deal with it? It make people question that. Right now, apart from saying they need $1 billion to restart it, there's $500 million every month.
According to
they
Kevin
pay.
Ramnarine, it's in US. 600 to $1 billion US dollars.
Okay. Well, it might be worth it. I mean, what you're going to do? It's, I said there, listen, Shell and BP is telling you that they're leaving the renewable right now because it has not worked out how they thought it was going to work out. They have made disastrous results. They have lost market share. Their shares have gone down because of that. And even though there is pressure from Extinction Rebellion and those who are for renewable energy, the fact is this is where we are going.
The problem globally with renewables, the Caribbean probably really wants renewables to work because we could then afford to have permanent energy plans at our lower scale. But the problem globally is that the economics never worked, and it was a very politically motivated initiative. But politics, unfortunately, can't make up losses, and when Germany's price of energy quadrupled because of the shifts that they made, I still think nuclear for large-scale energy production, there's new technologies. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima is based on a lot older technologies, and statistically, more people have died from accidents with wind turbines than nuclear disasters. Statistically, there's been more deaths with wind turbines, right, in its totality. But with that said, though, with the refinery, you were talking about when the government closed it. I don't know if we've necessarily discussed this point, but one of the things that I didn't like is when Prime Minister Young went up and said, well, we had to close it, it was not profitable. But my thinking is this: how is it magically profitable for a private investor to operate it now, and it wasn't profitable then?
Well, so
that's a management thing, right?
So that comes to the third point I'm making. Let me just see, year to date, BP stock has plunged by 18%, despite the strategy reset announced at the end of February. To compare, Shell shares have lost 13% so far this year, while Exxon and Chevron have dipped by 4% and 6% respectively. Anyway, much less than the oil price decline. So leaving that alone, it is clear that that is a change in strategy, and they've said that, you know? Okay, so that's good for us, because that's billions of dollars in investment. That's those are the big players. So if the big players are pivoting back, we should be fairly comfortable that that's the way we're going to go. And that brings me to the last point. We've been there. We've been in a position where we were on a standby arrangement with IMF. Yes, we've been in, back in the days, I think, after when the, whatever administration, I won't call anyone, but when I think our foreign exchange had dipped to 348 million, 348 million US. Yes, it's 348 million US. And we have been there, but you know what made the difference? The trust and confidence. And I always say that about Mr. Who was Motley. I always say that about him. I was not in government. I was not in politics at all. I was just an ordinary citizen. But I do remember he would come during that hard times and say, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We are doing X, Y, and Z. Every Monday morning, he'd speak to the unions. That's what they did in Jamaica when they said enough is enough. What has helped transform Jamaica's economy? It's not perfect, but it's certainly in a good position now.
Better than?
Far better, even with its debt profile. It's about the same as ours now, right?
When it was worse, right?
This was 143%, down to, yes,
and
it cut it in half.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, what happened there when Portia Simpson was still in power, right? And Holness was opposition, she agreed that they would support the opposition, support the trade union, the private sector, the ordinary man in the street who said we cannot continue like this. And they entered into a special arrangement with IMF. It's not exactly what had happened in the 1970s under Manley, which was a disaster, right? So I am saying what we can do here is we are not in anywhere 340 million US, we're certainly not there. And we do have the HSF fund, which is with billions of US dollars. So we do have a kind of guarantee for the kinds of debt we have taken on, which is not really what we should do, but we do have it. So the point I'm making is we need a government that the people believe what they say, a government that does what it says it's going to do, and a government that you can trust. If you can level with the people, do not serve a small minority of people in this country where you said that the rich, nothing wrong with the rich getting richer, trickle-down economy, which is not viable. It's been proven not to be a good thing with Reaganomics and
No, but it's not just
actualism.
that. When we look at locally, we have a lot of very specific problems with like how the labor market is not in a healthy place, how our education sector, we're not necessarily seeing certain levels of growth, right? And the education sector is not lining up the needs with what's available. So we have people with all of these big degrees, or in some cases, I hate to say this, but practically speaking, wasteful degrees, right? Because they don't have any actual job opportunities once they have this free education. I don't mind you getting educated, but like, are we educating you?
You sound like an elitist, you know.
Well, no, but like, because in some cases, young people, they don't necessarily know what to do, so they just kind of get a degree. And
the government should give more direction.
That's the thing.
And
like,
connect the needs of the economy
system,
to the needs of the with the education.
It's not necessarily for the student to try and figure it all out. We're supposed to have a system that could help guide them, right? Yeah. And incentivize certain things. And if they want to do something else, that's fine. They'll find their own way, as opposed to we kind of leave them lost into the wilderness and we hope that things work out. And it's not necessarily working out. So
we're ending on a good note,
well,
right? I think if we have that trust and confidence.
I have a couple other notes, but we do have Digger Martin on the line. Good morning, caller. Morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Small, and to the Honorable ex-Finance Minister, Mr. Sheriff. You're all talking energy, but I want to talk something on one of the JJs. We have two JJs, one in the opposition and one who now jumped from the PNM into the UNC. And I was reading an article in today's newspaper, the largest circulation newspaper. I'm not going to call the name. And that article was very, very, very eye-opening. He mentioned a number of things that, based on what he has seen in the PNM, and one of that he resigned a year ago, but he alluded to a case should be settled any time now of the Barbados abduction of Brent Thomas, which he alleged, and he is at the third Attorney General, a former Attorney General, Barbados Attorney and Trinidad Attorney, Mr. Amor, said it was illegal. And I'm going to throw it back into 2018, where Erla Christopher said she was launching an investigation based on that to determine what was the cause, based on the utterances of the judge. Now, that has been in court for a couple of years now. For a simple question, who gave the instructions to go to Barbados? Because to me, as a real bush lawyer, that is misbehavior in public office. And why are we spending so much taxpayers' money to zip somebody's mouth to tell us the truth? Now, let's dive into the executive of the police service. Earlier investigating the DCPI INI, and the DCP INI now is investigating, going to the DPP every week. What is going on in the police service? Remember, the DCP INI was charged for an accident for a little boy, and an ACP did that, and after a couple of weeks, the ACP dropped the charges. So what, and I want to use the H word, is happening in the executive of the police service? The image is so tainted. How can we trust them now? Anything they say that comes out of their mouth, we have to put about 5 question marks to it. Are they genuine? And I'm saying no more decisions are gone. Have a nice morning.
Well, I will only say this. He's really, the bigger picture in all what he said is the issue that you said, how are we going to pivot and maximize our potential in the energy sector? Yes, I'm coming back to that. And I'm saying it's dealing with what he's saying. You know, it is the trust and confidence issue.
Yes.
If people have trust and confidence and feel you're leveling with them and doing what they did in Jamaica, what was done under a Manning administration, I think there is hope that people will hold their straight. But giving us that $1 million, I mean, it doesn't, Stuart Young, if he was Prime Minister for 1 day, are they saying it doesn't matter how long you serve, you're entitled to the $1 million pension?
Yeah.
Because you call the election the next day. I mean, they do so many things, I have to say, do so many things to us to question.
The trust and confidence goes to one of his earlier public speaking appearances on the campaign trail, right? He basically touted, because the unions, were the PSA especially, the PSA president was very political, right? So it wasn't necessarily all technically, the content wasn't all technical. There was a lot of political stuff and emotional stuff. But it was effective how she was able. She spoke like a politician, even though I think this was one of the first times she spoke like a seasoned.
Who's that?
The current president of the PSA, right? Like a seasoned campaigner, even though it didn't seem as though she has a background in politics, right? Much better than some of her predecessors, right?
All office politics, you know.
Well, so my point is, it seems as though Stuart Young wanted to push back on that. So he mentioned the fact that he used to be a lawyer for the unions, and he was a lawyer for the Communication Workers Union, and he went into the industrial court and he told the court, what is good for the TSCT executive is good for the worker. And as soon as he said that, I'm like, you can't say that you stood by that principle then, and then proceeded to tell the public servants 4% for you and 40% plus for us. Like, it doesn't work. The messaging doesn't work, right?
And
anybody that trust. Exactly, anybody that picks up on that, it doesn't have to be the whole population, but enough people who pick up on that, it's hard to then move forward and marry those two things together. How are those things true at the same time?
And that's a challenge for any government that comes in, you know, or if the current government retains this position, it is going to be a challenge
Honestly,
for them
though, Karen,
to build that trust.
Similar to how you say it was obvious this Dragon deal, you know, was in trouble. It was, I think, politically speaking, it's very obvious not to take the SRC salary increase recommendations. It was very obvious. The fact that they did it, it's similar to what happened with the Brent Thomas situation. Although I would argue the Brent Thomas situation, it's technically worse, right? But it's similar in the sense of, what is going on? Why does it look so funny, right? Why did they do it? It doesn't necessarily make sense that they were so willing to do it and expose themselves to a certain amount of scrutiny, but they did it, right?
And not only that, the Barbados government apologized and said they were wrong to
get
involved. So Barbados owned up to their wrong doing in that
the thing with the Brent Thomas, I'm not too sure. That might be one of the worst scandals that the government has done. I think the Auditor General situation is the one that's right up there, right? But I say this about the Brent Thomas thing, that's more speculative, whereas the Auditor General, we have the Privy Council decision to kind of basically say this was a set
I'm trying not to come into
too political.
Yes, we did. Of course, the reason why we're going to reference that is because they are in government, so we have to deal with who's in government. But at this point in time, it's a very sensitive period, and I just wanted to deal with the energy sector and hopefully give, as I try to do, although some may say that I don't, but I do try to give my opinion coming from serving in government, whether it is on diversification initiatives. I have written on them, on several of them in the past. And this was just an opportunity when, since the energy sector is number one, the Dragonfield deal between Mannequin, is it Mannequin? Yeah, Mannequin.
Yeah, it is Mannequin, yeah.
Right, revoking the license. So I want to stay away so much, as much as to say we need to build.
Possible. Yes. For the politics. I'll try, but we have Move on the line. Good morning, caller, you on the air? Caller? Caller, good morning. Morning, caller.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning, morning.
Good morning, Mrs. Nunez Tichera.
Morning to you.
Mrs. Tichera, I have to thank you for speaking on the noise pollution problem that I asked you to speak about.
Yes, thank you.
And I have to apologize for thanking you so long after you did.
I think because it took so long to thank you directly.
That for some reason, I just couldn't get into the station. Sean, I don't know if you're all blocking me or what, but thank God to the WhatsApp number now, so I can get through. All right, but at present, I am getting a feedback, so I don't want to speak too much more. I just want to thank Mrs. Shera again on that issue, but I'll have to speak to her again further on that noise pollution issue at another time. But thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
And actually, recently, noise pollution was brought up in the news cycle, I think, on the campaign trail, either as people, outsiders complaining, or on the campaign trail as an issue to debate.
Yes, with the SEA exams coming up and having.
Well, they happen.
Yes, I know, but they were campaigning and loud
yes,
schools. Some of the
while
schools.
They was trying to. Yes.
Before the SEA, I think everybody shut down for the SEA, but the days leading to it, and these children are all nervous and anxious. You know, the noise.
And I find those music trucks just, you know, going up and down. I've only noticed them a few times in my area, but I find them more annoying than anything else. And if you want to cause me to just want to, you know, not want to vote for you, but you know, that's a very good way to do it. I'm just saying, right? That's the thing. It's like sometimes when an advertisement, because you see this with online advertising, right? Because there's all these pop-ups. It's like, you want a good way for me to not like your brand? Do certain advertising that's intrusive, and I will not like your brand. And depending, as long as there's a viable option, and maybe even if there isn't, I'll go somewhere else. But back to the conversation, I do wonder with the police, you know, ironically, the Prime Minister has spoken about trying to improve the leadership. We're not necessarily hearing, I don't know if the opposition
when he spoke about it as former Prime Minister?
This is Stuart Young.
Oh, no, yes, I forgot.
The current one. Yes, I know. It is kind of weird and confusing, right? We're not accustomed to this situation. I don't know if the opposition has done enough to kind of express how they might improve that aspect of the situation, which is kind of strange that they haven't necessarily brought it up directly. They've kind of stayed their crime talks away from that. And it just makes me wonder, to some extent, the population is looking at the politicians and they're not necessarily getting enough to be confident in with regards to the crime situation. Right now, the SOE is over. We kind of have to wait and see the current acting Commissioner of Police, who, by all accounts, he has his good points, but we're in this kind of no man's land with regards to crime. And one of the fears is with the economy, you know, they're kind of going hand in hand. The stress of one could compound the other. There's a lot of fraud warnings. I gave a notice where, like, fake payments online and fake links and stuff like that. So if it's not Judiciary, it's TT Post. If it's not TT Post, it's Facebook Marketplace or something or the other. And this is just one of those things where I think you have to look at the legislators. You all need to kind of fix some of these things for the online crimes and the loopholes.
I think it's not so much, I mean, from my point of view, a lot of it is not so much passing legislation, because I think they have passed a lot of cyber security legislation. There are I think there are two pieces of legislation that cover that area, even if you have to amend it. I think it's enforcement. That's the problem.
Right.
You know, we've had a problem in almost every area of enforcement, and that goes back to the topic that I came to talk about, which is that I think there's a positive, opportunities for Trinidad and Tobago, and they're going to take some out. I think I have confidence in those players, but it is also important that whoever forms in the administration, the current one or another administration, that they work at building the trust and confidence of and accountability and transparency, which is necessary for the country to start to really believe and hold their hands as Jamaica has. And that is really my position on that.
Coming together. There's something I want to ask for that. Go ahead, Corey, on here.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Sean.
Morning.
Good morning, Ms. Teixeira.
Morning.
This is St. Augustine calling. I have 3 questions this morning to ask. All right. Ms. Teixeira, well, I want to thank you for bringing all this good news. I'm just sorry that it's not a nationwide thing where people will be following to know what's going on. But will you be a part of helping the solution, seeing that you have all this information? With any one of the government that win with the election here, will you be assisting any of them to push this so that Trinidad and Tobago can kind of get back afloat? That is one. The other question is, I want to ask the PNM supporters to be truthful. I don't want nobody to get vexed with me, but I just speak in facts. Do you really want to take 5 years at this PNM cabinet that we have here for the last 9 years? And the other question is the UNC followers. Do you really think that the UNC is ready or in a position to take over and run Trinidad and Tobago and bring back some kind of solution country to back afloat? Because really and truly, we have a position that most of the supporters in her cabinet do not support her. But the real is, who else is there to really run the opposition? Because they have the race scared. And we know really and truly that party will not support an African leader. And the only person they're ready to lead the UNC after Kamala is Ms. Julian John. Have trust. You think these people will be able to run Trinidad and Tobago? Because it comes like you're jumping from the fire from the pot into the fire. Because look at what PNM do for the last 9 years. So I don't think this UN will be able, if they come and win, to really run this country. That is my question. I want all the supporters for the PNM and the UNC to dig deep and be honest and answer that for me, please. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. I think that last part is where you'll get some of the hiccups.
Yeah, I think it was very responsible of you, actually, your contribution, because I think you showed a level of objectivity which is sadly lacking in the politics of today. But I guess that's what politics is about. They say don't discuss politics and religion, and that must be the reason. But to come to your question, I am a person who loves Trinidad and Tobago. I have committed to Trinidad and Tobago, and in fact I had a sort of heated discussion with a friend of mine yesterday. So yes, if asked to help in any way, I certainly will do what I can to help Trinidad and Tobago once I feel comfortable and confident that I'm dealing with people that I feel I can put my trust and confidence. If I don't feel that way, I'll have to not accept, because that is just who I am. With regards to your statement about the UNC, I think right now, to be honest, I think it's not so much about whether they want the UNC as much as they don't want. A lot of people, anyhow, say what John Jeremy has said on the platform, that they prefer at this point in time to give someone else a chance, because I don't want to go into all the politics, because I said I don't want to find myself in that situation on this show anyhow. And I will say that I think, you know, the UNC did under Pandey, well, he benefited from the LNG deal, that is for sure.
Yeah,
but I remember they said performance beats old talk any time. So they've had an term at it. I think the challenge for the UNC when it came in office is that it was perceived to have too many issues of corruption among its own ministers. I think she has tried to deal with that. That is Kamala, and I have to admire her for her tenacity. You've got to admire her for that. I mean, another person would have given up a long time ago. Regards to her ability, I mean, if I have to judge her based on acumen, political acumen, and you do have to, politics makes for strange bedfellows. She has always topped everything she's done. When John Jeremy said she came first at Caville, that's true. When she was at law school, she came first again. That's true. I did the MBA with her, and she got a merit. You have to get 9 A's out of 11 subjects. So she definitely has the capacity, the intellectual capacity, and obviously the political capacity. And I think what she's tried to do is remove many of the persons who clearly symbolize the negativity of her administration. And I will say at this, she didn't.
I won't say she did for all.
Okay, but she did for quite a few.
All the negativity.
Okay, but she has removed quite a bit. But look at this. The point about it too is when you look at this current administration, why people are even, you've seen so many people going to UNC meetings.
Yeah. They want
a
change. The UNC out. And they're looking for such a change. Yes.
They're looking for change, and they're willing to take a bet. They're willing to risk it. They're willing to risk it, and that is what is at stake in Trinidad and Tobago right now. I give no views on whether yay or nay, but I mean, I have spoken on this government, and you know, I say no more.
In principle, I don't like change for the sake of change, but when you have a long term in office, 2 terms is technically long, right?
It is in Trinidad.
You're going to have a position where it's not about necessarily the alternative, it's about how they respond to that situation. Do you want it again? That's a very pertinent question. We have someone on the line. Good morning, caller, you on the air.
Morning, Sean. What are you doing, Miss Old there?
I'm sorry.
We kind of wickedness already doing the first people, but we don't hear tiny talk about the first people. We ain't talk about the first people already.
I didn't say it. Did I say it?
What is that?
I'm
He's
not
talking about.
It might have been a politician that said something.
Oh, okay.
Let us get on to serious business.
Okay.
Brent Thomas, let us go back some years. Ms. Karen Teixeira, good morning.
Good morning.
We left, our police officers, CID left here and went Guyana. They went there and they hold a man and brought him back here. Was that kidnapping? No. Brent Thomas thinks, forget that. Sean, I want to do some investigation for my brother. I have a serious meeting in North Coast soon. Which government had leased our pitch lake in South? If you remember during the course of your show before you close off, you could say, take a turn now, watching, right? Thirdly, we want to thank Mr. Keith Christopher Rowley for coming into this country in the worst mess it has ever been since Eric Williams' time, charging politicians for thieving the poor people children food money, and also removing himself because it seems as though the people in this country have some kind of evil spirit over the eyes and the brains. Lastly, you see that dragon mouth down in Chagaramas? My grandfather came across there on a donkey cat. So that tells you that here is part of Venezuela. Next thing, at Asiquibo business, I will get back to you on that. We're digging on that history, right? You all have a nice day and be safe. We're looking on and see what the settlers will be doing. If it's either they're for corruption or they're not for corruption. The PNN thief. So what if the UNC thief too? That was a lady who was given the post as minister in the education ministry. Victory, East Steve Gabaran Singh. And what happened after that? Put that in mind, brother. You all stay safe. Goodbye.
I don't know what to say to that. That sounds like a platform speech. I don't know what to say to that. I mean, I just, that's his point of view, and that's what it is.
The thing is, Paula, we were literally now talking about it. It's not even about the UNC, although the UNC are not necessarily helping themselves with how they have conducted their side of the coin and communicated issues and put forward proposals. But at the end of the day, that might not matter. The problem for the PNM is they are at a disadvantage. It's just a natural thing in politics. And that's why I don't like change for the sake of change. Because to me, that's random, right? You're just hoping that the change is better than the current. And it might not be, right? Which goes to your point. However, the fact of the matter is at some point when people are frustrated or disappointed enough, and after 2 terms in office, it is very easy, whether fair or unfair, for a population to reach that point because of how they perceive certain things. And the government has not helped themselves because a lot of the time, I don't criticize the government based on what the UNC says, because I'll be a waste of time. I criticize the government based on what the government says. Like the Auditor General situation, I didn't even need to use what the Auditor General had to say to criticize how that situation was handled. And case in point, neither did the Privy Council, because they didn't even bother to hear the Auditor General's lawyers before they made a decision. It was that apparent. So I understand, because there's a very real flip side to the equation where people look at the UNC and they have doubts. It's a very real phenomenon. That's why we can't call the election to say, oh, so-and-so is going to win. Because the low-hanging fruit would be the opposition should have an advantage in this case. The incumbent should have a disadvantage. This should be easy, right? And we've had some economic challenges, and we saw what that did to the NAR. This should be simple equation, not much politicking to do here, but unfortunately it's not. Right now, at least, there's a perception that it's closer than anyone is willing to call a definite reason, right?
I just want to say one thing. He mentioned that there's no difference between the Brent Thomas and the Guyana case. I can't remember the Guyana case, but I think the issue with the Brent Thomas was the airplane, which is a national security, part of the government's national security.
Oh, it was a CARICOM airplane. I don't think it was even a Trinidadian airplane.
But I think the permission to use it for purposes of getting Brent Thomas back to Trinidad, which was deemed by the judge to be a case of kidnapping, and he condemned it in the worst possible way. Yes, the judge, yes, he used very strong language. Yes. I think it was the use of that plane and the instruction that had to have been given by somebody high in the government to go to Barbados using that plane to bring back Brent Thomas. I think that was the issue there. I don't know much about the Guyanese case, but I know that is the issue.
It's not just that. So from what I understand, they did not go through the proper processes to extradite, right? It's not a simple case of arrest. So
yes,
again, I don't know what happened in Guyana, but if the same thing holds true, well, then it's not the case that the Brent Thomas thing should be considered nothing to see there. Right. It's a too wrong situation, right?
But I do think it's that.
So the thing with Barbados was the Barbadian AG told his government, don't even contest this matter, concede it, because they had no legal ground to stand on. There was no proper process that was gone through they didn't follow the proper process to bring him back to Trinidad. So essentially, any sort of criminal proceedings would be, fruit from the poison tree, right? it wouldn't stand up to scrutiny. And in fact, some aspects of the case, the government did not appeal, right? And I think essentially that might have been, I think basically they're appealing the fact that the judge might have declared it as a kidnapping. I can't remember exactly what they were appealing because it's been so long ago. The way how courts just kind of take so long to deal with anything. Sanon is back. Caller.
Tell us about Guyana.
Maybe. Good morning, caller. Welcome back.
John. This Galen Benson case, by
the which case?
That case was doing with Natis Cadet, the senior superintendent. How I look at it, I might be wrong. How I look at it is that once you commit a crime in any part of the world, all America, they send the people for you and they carry you back to face your charge. I don't find this country should be on those petty things. We should be on why people getting bail for the AR-15.
But caller, the thing about it is, that's not how it works. You have to have, police from one country has no authority in another country. You have to have proper, it's based on, yes, because of sovereignty, it's based on treaty, and whatever your extradition treaty is, outlines the proper legal process.
Or a country that goes go in another country and
right. Because the problem is an arrest.
I understand. This is why I say I don't know the legal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
right. So.
Thank you, caller.
Okay, brother.
Okay. Yeah. The problem is, listen, we haven't even reached the point if there was anything actionable by the police.
Right.
Because unfortunately, when you're dealing with criminal arrests, you're suspending rights. So you can't just do it willy-nilly. The process is basically there to protect citizens from arbitrary arrests and arbitrary action by the police that could basically take away our rights. Even if it's temporary, you being unlawfully detained by the police for a few days is grounds for a lawsuit. I think we've already had that precedent set in the local courts, right? Yeah. So there's grounds for Brent Thomas to sue the state for a lot of money. However, there's aspects of this whole situation that is not out in the public, right? And don't want to speculate on it. But generally speaking, caller, this does look that bad because we're talking about someone's individual freedoms being trampled on, not by criminals, but potentially by the state. And it leaves a lot of questions back to trust and confidence.
That is my...
Because here's the thing. The current DCP that went there, that led the team, or at least we assume she was in charge, DCP Martin, the senior officer, she didn't have the authority to get the plane on her own. So as much as we could maybe call her out for her part into this,
somebody gave her that
authority. She didn't do it by herself. Someone told her to do it. So to be fair, for her, she was following orders. Now you could say it was a bad order she shouldn't have followed, but the point is
maybe she gave some bad instructions or bad information. And
we don't know.
Acted on that. We do not know at this point.
I do think though that the reasoning, she was instructed. I don't think it really came from her. I think ultimately she was instructed, but I won't necessarily say why. That's a whole big kettle of fish and conspiracy theories, and we won't go there. Although in TNT it's not so much a conspiracy theory. But anyway, I think she was instructed, right? Because somebody above her had to secure that plane, and to some extent, I think she should be. Well, I was going to say she should be knowledgeable enough to know not to try and circumvent due process, but then she arrested the commissioner in the manner that she arrested the commissioner. So I'm not entirely sure about that statement. And that's the thing, caller. I think at the end of the day, we understand where you're coming from, but we have to judge the current PNM administration based on the current PNM, not on the PNM's history. That's one of the things that the PNM does a lot better than the UNC. They look to their history.
Because they have much more history.
And to some extent, it's valid in some ways, right? The stability of the party and the structure of the party, you're still seeing that going strong and being a benefit, right? And being not just a benefit, but a positive as a political entity. It makes the entity look stronger, looks better organized.
But I have maintained that the PNM as a party is a good party.
Yes.
The problem is the leadership, and the leadership we have for 10 years, and that's all I will say on that. It's not the party. It's the issue of the governance issues with the leadership. That, I think, has caused the problem and has caused many people to feel so. We don't know what is going to happen on election day, but it certainly brings that issue of the alternative of another government being a reality, being a possibility, even a probability. We do not know. We wait and see.
And I'll just say, caller that asked if Karen is willing to help the government, whoever wins the election. All she could speak to is her willingness. I think one of the key things is we need to understand the people who have opinions and ideas that don't want to be involved in the bubble, well then you could only wait and see if you're being asked to help, and as she rightfully said, under what terms, because sometimes you can't assume it's always in good faith, right? So, but the last thing, and this, you don't have to answer it now. We could save this for next week. Okay. But one of the things that I wanted to get to was, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And that they said that before. You've outlined the potential scenarios that would allow for that to exist again, or that can allow for that to exist again. But to me, one of the things I'm concerned with is the fact that we might fall for the same trap that we did last time. We get the light at the end of the tunnel, and now we could go back on the spending spree and not look towards spending to invest in the future. And that comes to diversification, which is the topic next week that you want to get into.
Yeah, and I just would say, just to end on that, the energy sector is now pivoting back, as we said already, the hydrocarbons, and the big players are the BPs and the Shells of this world, and therefore I don't think they are going to be neglectful or not perform within a specific time. They have too much invested in it. The mistake this government made was continuing with pursuing the Venezuela agenda when there were so many opportunities within our waters. But as I said, it may have been because at that time renewable energy was the poster child, right? So that might have affected it. So I think right now what we're looking at is that it's not just energy sector. Energy sector is important because it's the major revenue take for the country. Right now, I think the government itself has put itself in this situation because in many, many areas, it's not performed. It has not enforced. They have not part of the, anyway, I don't want to go into all of that, but it's just put themselves in a situation which allows an opportunity for the opposition to be a possible or potential threat to them and in the next elections. That's what I will say.
I think one area where the opposition should try to do better is to give us the confidence that they're not going to, okay, we want change, but there are times when, okay, the new person comes in and it changes everything and it's not for the better because they're trying, not because it's corruption or anything, just because they're trying to do something different. And some certain aspects of government deals and business, you can't just do short-term knee-jerk reactions, right? You have to, okay, we've invested in it, we've had these projects ongoing, we have to let them come to fruition, otherwise, the losses might be too much, the initiatives. When you switch agendas too harshly, that's the one objective or practical thing with the UNC that I'm afraid of. I'm not going to say that discredits them from being elected in. I just hope that doesn't happen.
But they did not change the initiative with the LNG. When Pandey came in, Basil Pandey came in, he followed through with that LNG. I do think the partnership, though, to some extent, what they did differently was not necessarily always beneficial with regards to certain aspects. About both.
Yeah.
It's just that the PNM has been in office
more
and for continuous periods and really can boast of making substantial contributions to Trinidad and Tobago. but we're not dealing with the party and its history. I think all of us would agree to that, even if you are not on the side of any particular party.
That's the irony, Stuart Young said it's a new chapter, so if it's a new chapter, they need to stop going to the past as much. Same thing for the UNC. The UNC keeps talking about what the partnership did and then said, don't live in the past. It's like the
messaging.
Yes, the contradicting messaging needs to, you need to kind of plan what you're going to say and stick to a coherent message, please. That's the communicator in me. All right, over time. So thanks to the callers. Thanks, Karen Shishera, for joining me once again and bringing this topic, which some of this stuff, like one of the callers said, I myself didn't even necessarily. Thank you. There's some hope. There's some hope.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Hope for the hopeless. No pun intended. Folks, as always, have a good day today. Stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. And always remember that it's nice to be nice. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.